Superman, the most powerful being on planet Earth.
We finally meet.
Now, as planned, I'll destroy you. And of course, that reporter you always do interviews with. Who raised you as a child? I'll kill them too.
No matter what you do to me, Luther, plans will work.
Wrap it up.
Good luck with that.
Make a move, Big Blue.
Left to left.
They chose him. Let them die.
Quit messing around!
I'm not messing around. I'm doing important stuff.
Hey, buddy. Eyes up here.
Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is based on a powerful Hollywood movie story, explained in a simple and interesting way. This is not just a movie recap, it's a journey through emotions, struggle, and unforgettable moments. So relax, stay till the end, and enjoy this amazing story. Superman, 2025, Movie Review. Superman is a 2025 American superhero film based on the eponymous character from DC Comics. Written and directed by James Gunn, it is the first film in the DC Universe, DCU, and a reboot of the Superman film series. David Corenswet stars as Kal/Clark Kent/Superman, alongside Rachel Brosnahan, Nicholas Hoult, Edi Gathegi, Anthony Carrigan, Nathan Fillion, and Isabella Merced. In the film, Superman faces unintended consequences after he intervenes in an international conflict orchestrated by billionaire Lex Luthor, Hoult. Superman must win back public support with the help of his reporter and superhero colleagues. The film was produced by Gunn and Peter Safran of DC Studios. Development on a sequel to the DC Extended Universe, DCEU, film Man of Steel, 2013, began by October 2014, with Henry Cavill set to return as Superman. Plans changed after the troubled production of Justice League, 2017, and the Man of Steel sequel was no longer moving forward by May 2020. Gunn began work on a new Superman film around August 2022. In October, he became co-CEO of DC Studios with Safran, and they began work on a new DC universe. Gunn was publicly revealed to be writing the film in December. The title Superman, Legacy was announced the next month. Gunn was confirmed to direct in March 2023, and Corenswet and Brosnahan, Lois Lane, were cast that June. The subtitle was dropped by the end of February 2024, when filming began in Svalbard, Norway. Production primarily took place at Trilith Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, with location filming around Georgia and Ohio. Filming wrapped in July. The film's influences include the comic book All-Star Superman, 2005 to 2008, by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. Superman premiered at the TCL Chinese Theater on July 7, 2025, and was released by Warner Bros. Pictures in the United States on July 11. It is the first film in the DCU's Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. The film grossed $618.7 million worldwide, making it the 10th highest grossing film of 2025, and received mostly positive reviews. Critics found it to be fun, colorful, and earnest, although some felt it was overstuffed, while the performances of Corenswet, Brosnahan, and Hoult were praised. A follow-up film, Man of Tomorrow, is scheduled for release in 2027, while a spin-off television series featuring supporting characters from the film, including Skyla Gisando's Jimmy Olsen, is in development for HBO Max. Clark Kent / Superman stops the nation of Boravia from invading the neighboring country of Jarhanpur and warns Boravian President Vasil Gurkos to leave Jarhanpur alone. In Metropolis, Superman is defeated for the first time by a meta-human called the Hammer of Boravia and flees to his fortress of Solitude in Antarctica with the help of the superpowered dog Krypto. They are followed by Angela Spica / the Engineer, an ally of tech billionaire Lex Luthor. Superman's robots use concentrated solar radiation to heal him and comfort Superman with a message from his birth parents, Jor-El and Lara Lorvan, who sent him to Earth to save him from the destruction of their planet Krypton. The message was damaged during the journey, so only the first half can be played. Superman returns to Metropolis and is again beaten by the Hammer, who is secretly Luthor's meta-human Ultraman. Superman agrees to be interviewed by Lois Lane, his girlfriend and reporter colleague at the Daily Planet, leading to an argument when Lois presses him on the legal and ethical implications of his actions in Boravia. Luthor unleashes a kaiju on Metropolis as a distraction while he infiltrates the fortress with Ultraman and the Engineer. They overpower the robots, capture Krypto, and discover the Kryptonian message. The Engineer restores the damaged portion. Superman rescues civilians while fighting the kaiju with the Justice Gang, a team composed of heroes Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific, and Hawkgirl. Despite Superman's wanting to take the creature alive, Mr. Terrific kills it. Luthor broadcasts the Kryptonian message and Superman is shocked to hear the second half, in which his parents urge him to conquer Earth and take many wives to restore the Kryptonian race. Public opinion turns against Superman, especially when he angrily confronts Luthor, looking for Krypto. Lois reassures Superman that she believes he is good, and he confesses his love for her before surrendering himself to the US government. They hand him over to Luthor for detainment and questioning inside an artificial pocket universe where Luthor secretly holds his enemies, including Krypto. Superman is imprisoned with the meta-human Metamorpho. Luthor uses Metamorpho's infant son Joey as leverage to force him to transmute one of his hands into kryptonite, rendering Superman powerless. During questioning, Luthor murders one of Superman's supporters, Malik Ali. A horrified Metamorpho agrees to help Superman escape, and they free Joey and Krypto. Lois convinces Mr. Terrific to help find Superman and they enter the Pocket Universe, rescuing the others. Lois takes Superman to recuperate with his adoptive human parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent. Jonathan tells the demoralized Superman that his choices and actions determine who he is, not the message from his birth parents. Luthor's girlfriend Eve Teschmacher, who is infatuated with Daily Planet photographer Jimmy Olsen, provides him evidence that Luthor is aiding Boravia in return for half of Jarhanpur's territory. Luthor imprisons her and lures Superman back to Metropolis by opening an unstable portal to the Pocket Universe, creating a rift in reality that splits the city in half. Superman sends Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and Metamorpho to stop Boravia from invading Jarhanpur again. Hawkgirl kills Gurkos and Green Lantern invites Metamorpho to join the Justice Gang. In Metropolis, Superman and Mr. Terrific fight the Engineer and Ultraman. After Superman defeats the Engineer, he learns that Ultraman is a clone of himself created by Luthor. With Krypto's help, Superman defeats Ultraman and knocks him into a black hole beneath the rift. At Luthor's headquarters, Mr. Terrific closes the rift. Luthor says he orchestrated the Jarhanpur conflict as an excuse to implicate Superman, driven by envy of his public admiration despite being an alien. Superman challenges his ideology, but Luthor remains defiant and is subdued by Krypto. Lois and Jimmy expose Luthor's schemes to the public, clearing Superman's name. Luthor and his associates are arrested, and those trapped in his pocket universe, including Eve, are freed. Lois confesses that she loves Clark, too. As Superman recovers at the fortress, his cousin Kara Zor-El drunkenly arrives to pick up Krypto. The robots comfort Superman with footage of his childhood on Earth with his human parents. Skyla Gisondo plays Jimmy Olsen, a boyish young photographer who is Clark and Lois's closest colleague, while Wendell Pierce plays Daily Planet editor-in-chief Perry White. Pierce said Perry is always grumpy because Luthor had an affair with Perry's wife, and Perry's second child may actually be Luthor's, so Perry's driving force is wanting to get back at Luthor. 1619 to 1643. The actor asked his friends for information on the character because he did not read comic books growing up. Other staff at the Daily Planet include Beck Bennett as reporter Steve Lombard, Michaela Hoover as columnist Kat Grant, and Christopher McDonald as reporter Ron Troop. Pruitt Taylor Vince and Neva Howell respectively play Jonathan and Martha Kent, Clark's adoptive human parents, and studied tapes of drummer and radio personality Richard Christie's parents to develop their Kansan accents for the film. Bradley Cooper, who previously collaborated with Gunn on his Guardians of the Galaxy films, 2014 to 2023, and Angela Sarafian respectively portray Superman's Kryptonian parents Jor-El and Lara Lorvan. Of the Superman robots who aid Superman at the Fortress of Solitude, prior Gunn collaborators Alan Tudyk, Michael Rooker, and Pom Klementieff respectively voice 4, later named Gary, 1, and 5, with Grace Chan as the voice of 12. Gunn's wife Jennifer Holland is the uncredited voice of another robot at the end of the film. Dinesh Thiagarajan plays Malik Mali Ali, a falafel cart vendor who supports Superman. Dog actor Jolene stood in for the superpowered dog Crypto, whom Gunn described as a not-so-good good boy. The character was primarily created with visual effects, and was modeled after Gunn's dog Ozu. Sarah Sampaio portrays Eve Teschmacher, Luthor's assistant and girlfriend who is secretly involved with Jimmy. She felt comfortable performing with Hoult after working with him on a campaign for Armani. Maria Gabriela de Faria plays Angela Spica / the Engineer, an ally of Luthor whose abilities come from nanotechnology in her body. She appears ahead of a planned film about the Authority, the team that she is a member of in the comics. Other allies of Luthor include Zlatko Buric as Vasil Gurkos, the president of Boravia, Terrence Rosemore and Stephen Blackheart as Luthor Corp employees Otis Berg and Sidney Happerson, respectively, and Trevor Newland as the humanoid creature Mr. Handsome. Gunn said Luthor created Mr. Handsome when he was 12 and has true sentiment for the creature. Comedian Michael Ian Black plays Clevie Thornwade, host of the right-wing talk show The Sphere, who runs a smear campaign against Superman, while James Hiroyuki Liao portrays General Mori, the U.S. Secretary of Defense. Additionally, Frank Grillo reprises his role as ARG U.S. Director Rick Flag Sr. From the animated DCU series Creature Commandos, 2024, present, Tanashi Kaji's Bolden reprises her role as ARG U.S. member Flo Crawley, now the FBI director, from the DCEU film The Suicide Squad, 2021. Millie Alcock has an uncredited cameo appearance as Superman's cousin Kara Zor-El / Supergirl ahead of her own film, Supergirl, 2026. John Cena has an uncredited cameo appearance as Chris Smith / Peacemaker on a news show, Mocking Superman, ahead of his role in the second season of Peacemaker. 2025, and Gunn's brother Sean has a cameo appearance as billionaire Maxwell Lord, the head of Lord Tech and the corporate backer of the Justice Gang. Sean said they ignored past depictions of Lord when creating their version, including Peter Facinelli's portrayal in the Arrowverse series Supergirl, 2015 to 2021, and Pedro Pascal's portrayal in the DCEU film Wonder Woman 1984, 2020. Other cameo appearances include ABC News correspondent Will Reeve, the son of Christopher Reeve, as a GBS News reporter, Michael Rosenbaum, who portrayed Luthor in Smallville, as the voice of one of Luthor's Raptor guards, and Louisa Krause in the non-speaking role of Sapphire Stagg, Metamorpho's wife. In 2012, Warner Bros. Pictures was planning for the film Man of Steel, 2013, based on the DC Comics character Superman, to start a shared universe, which became known as the DC Extended Universe, DCEU, They announced a full slate of DC films in October 2014, prioritizing Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, 2016, as the second DCEU film after Man of Steel failed to meet the studio's financial expectations. Despite this, they said an undated sequel to Man of Steel was in development with Henry Cavill set to reprise his role as Clark Kent/Superman. Man of Steel director Zack Snyder said they had been considering the imprisoned Kryptonians from the first film and the character Brainiac as antagonists for the sequel before work began on Batman v Superman. A Man of Steel sequel was in active development as a top priority for the studio in August 2016, which Cavill's manager Danny Garcia confirmed the following month. Amy Adams, who portrayed Lois Lane in Man of Steel, said in November that the studio was working on the screenplay. Matthew Vaughn was Warner Bros.' top choice to direct the film and had preliminary conversations about it by March 2017. Vaughn and comic book writer Mark Miller previously pitched a new Superman trilogy prior to the development of Man of Steel, in which the destruction of the planet Krypton would not occur until after Superman had already grown up on the planet. After the troubled production of the DCEU film Justice League, 2017, Warner Bros. Re-evaluated its approach to DC projects. By the end of 2017, a Man of Steel sequel was not coming anytime soon, if at all. Justice League producer Charles Roven said story ideas had been discussed but there was no script. Before the release of Mission: Impossible – Fallout in July 2018, director Christopher McQuarrie and co-star Cavill pitched their take on a new Superman film, partially inspired by the animated film Up, 2009, but Warner Bros. Did not pursue the idea. Later in 2018, the studio asked James Gunn to write and direct a Superman film, but he was uncertain if he wanted to take on the character. He did not have a clear vision, especially since Superman is a well-known character unlike the Guardians of the Galaxy whom he adapted for Marvel Studios in the film Guardians of the Galaxy, 2014. Gunn chose to make the Suicide Squad, 2021, instead, calling it the easier path. In September, negotiations for Cavill to reprise his role for a cameo appearance in Shazam 2019, ended due to contract issues, as well as a scheduling conflict with Cavill's Mission: Impossible commitments. Cavill was reported to be parting ways with the studio, with no plans for him to reprise his role in future projects, but Cavill said in November 2019 that he had not given up on the character and still wanted to do the role justice. At that time, Warner Bros. Was unsure which direction to take the character and was talking to high-profile talent about the property, including J.J. Abrams, whose company Bad Robot signed an overall deal with Warner Bros.' parent company Warner Media, and Michael B. Jordan, who pitched himself as a black version of the character. By May 2020, Warner Bros. Was no longer developing a Man of Steel sequel, but Cavill was in talks to appear in a different DC film. In February 2021, Ta-Nehisi Coates was revealed to be writing a new Superman film that Abrams was producing. The film was expected to feature a black actor portraying Superman, with the potential for Jordan to take on the role. In April 2022, Discovery Incorporated and Warner Media merged to become Warner Bros. Discovery, WBD, led by President and CEO David Zaslav. The new company was expected to restructure DC Entertainment, and Zaslav began searching for an equivalent to Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige to lead the new subsidiary. Zaslav and WBD felt DC lacked a coherent creative and brand strategy and were underusing Superman. Over the years, Gunn considered how he would approach Superman if he were ever given another opportunity, and around late August 2022 he was hired to work on a Superman film that was not a sequel to Man of Steel and would be standalone from the DCEU. Zaslav spent time with Gunn while he was writing the script. Cavill made a cameo appearance in the post-credits scene of the DCEU film Black Adam, released in October 2022, and Warner Bros. Was reportedly pursuing a Cavill-led Man of Steel sequel once again. Roven was producing and the studio was searching for writers. They wanted McQuarrie to direct, but he was unlikely to be available due to his commitments to the Mission Impossible franchise. Coates's film was still in development. Cavill's role in Black Adam was approved by Warner Brothers film chiefs Michael DeLuca and Pamela Abdi when they were approached directly by Black Adam star Dwayne Johnson, who began promoting the idea of co-starring with Cavill in a Black Adam vs. Superman film. Cavill signed a one-off deal for Black Adam and only received a verbal agreement that he would continue playing the character in the DCEU. Cavill publicly announced that he would return as Superman for future projects, and said his Black Adam cameo was a very small taste of future plans. He said Superman would be enormously joyful moving forward. Stephen Knight wrote a script treatment for the sequel around that time, which reportedly included Brainiac as the antagonist, but Warner Brothers executives were not thrilled with his take. Michael Bay was eyed to potentially direct the film. Gunn and the Suicide Squad producer Peter Safran were announced as the co-chairs and co-CEOs of the newly formed DC Studios at the end of October 2022. A week after starting their new roles, the pair had begun developing an 8 to 10-year plan for a new DC Universe, DCU, that would be a soft reboot of the DCEU. In mid-November, Gunn was publicly revealed to be writing a new DC film. Andy Muschietti, director of the DCEU film The Flash, 2023, expressed interest in directing a Superman project with a similar tone to director Richard Donner's film Superman, 1978. In early November, Cavill expressed interest in a future project that explored Superman's capacity to give and to love the people of Earth and to inspire others, and said he was looking forward to meeting with Gunn to discuss future opportunities. Work on the Man of Steel sequel stalled later that month while Gunn and Safran were developing their plans. In December 2022, Gunn said Superman was one of the top priorities for DC Studios before publicly announcing that he was writing a new Superman film. The film was set to focus on a younger version of the character and would therefore not star Cavill. There was potential for Gunn to direct the film as well. It would not retell the origin of Superman, and would focus on him as a young reporter interacting with key characters such as Lois Lane. Gunn and Safran met with Cavill to explain their decision and discuss potentially working with him for a different role in the future. In January 2023, Gunn and Safran unveiled the first projects from their DCU slate, which began with Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. Their Superman film was the first film in that chapter and was officially titled Superman: Legacy. It was given a release date of July 11, 2025, which coincides with the birthday of Gunn's late father. Safran wanted Gunn to direct the film. Gunn said Superman: Legacy would take specific inspiration from the comic book All-Star Superman, 2005 to 2008, by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. The film was also inspired by the Superman animated shorts, 1941 to 1943, and Superman, the animated series, 1996 to 2000, and by other comics books such as Superman, Birthright, 2003, 04, The Brainiac Story Arc, 2008, Superman, Ending Battle, 2002, Superman for All Seasons, 1998, Kingdom Come, 1996, Morrison's Action Comics run, and Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, 1986. Gunn considered using Brainiac as the antagonist for the film. He ultimately sought to balance what was classic and what was completely new, and chose to incorporate imagery and aesthetics from the Silver Age of comic books alongside authentic storytelling that was focused on Superman's character. Gunn also cited the kaiju film, Godzilla-1, 2023, as an inspiration in regards to the humanity of the characters as well as the depiction of the giant monster that attacks Metropolis. DCU writer Tom King said in March 2023 that Gunn was also directing the film, which Gunn confirmed later that month. At that time, Safran was confirmed to be producing the film with Gunn, doing so through their respective production companies, the Safran Company and Troll Court Entertainment. Gunn was hesitant to direct the film, despite encouragement from Safran and others, until he realized how focusing on Superman's heritage with his aristocratic Kryptonian parents and adoptive farmer parents from Smallville, Kansas, would inform the characterization. Gunn felt emotionally connected to this aspect of the film because of his late father. He said in April that the film's tone would differ from his Guardians of the Galaxy films, 2014 to 2023, and he suggested that Superman's dog Krypto could appear. Production design, costume design, and casting began in April 2023. Production designer Beth Mickle and costume designer Judiana Makovsky returned from The Suicide Squad and Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, 2023. Filming was set to begin in January 2024. Gunn said the character Jimmy Olsen would appear. He did not intend for the film to be a comedy and intended for it to differ from previous Superman films while respecting what came before. Gunn completed the first draft of the script at the end of April. Production was not expected to be impacted by the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike when it began in early May. Gunn was looking for an actor to play Superman who possessed the character's humanity, kindness, and compassion, and was somebody who you want to give a hug. Audition tapes for the main roles of Superman, Lois Lane, and Lex Luthor were submitted by early May. Gunn began watching them later that month, while he was storyboarding the film. At this point, Gunn watched the film Pearl, 2022, and David Corenswet's performance in it stood out to him. Corenswet had previously expressed his desire to portray Superman, and his audition was one of the first Gunn saw. Corenswet became a top contender for Superman and was set to do a screen test by early June. Jacob Elordi, Tom Brittney, and Andrew Richardson were also in consideration, though Elordi declined to read for the role. Patrick Schwarzenegger, the Arrowverse series Supergirl, 2015 to 2021, guest star Pearson Fode, and Jack Quaid, the voice of Superman in the animated series My Adventures with Superman, 2023, present, all submitted self-tapes for Superman. Emma Mackey, Rachel Brosnahan, Samara Weaving, and Phoebe Dynevor tested for Lane. Dynevor was one of the final contenders. Brosnahan made an audition tape with her husband Jason Ralph, who read Superman's lines. Nicholas Hoult, the runner-up to play Bruce Wayne/Batman in the standalone DC film The Batman, 2022, was eyed for Luthor but chose to pursue the role of Superman instead, because he felt while he could play Luthor well, he insisted himself to focus on auditioning for Superman. Gunn considered A-list actors he had already worked with for Luthor and discussed the role with the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 actor that was reported to be Bradley Cooper. Black actors were also being considered for Luthor. Testing took place using the label Apex, a reference to a comic version of Luthor called Apex Luthor. Other superheroes were expected to be established in the film setting, with casting underway for a black actor to play Michael Holt/Mr. Terrific and for an Asian or Latina actress to portray a character labeled Blitz. In-person screen tests took place at the Warner Bros. Studios lot in Burbank, California, with Gunn and Safran in mid-June 2023. The actors tested in makeup and costume as Kent and Lane in the following pairs: Holt and Brosnahan, Brittney and Dynevor, and Corenswet and Mackey. The Kent contenders then tested in costume as Superman against Mackey. One of Cavill's original DCEU Superman suits, which was in poor condition, was used for the tests. Gunn said Brittney messed it up and then it was torn to shreds by Corenswet, who was too tall. Gunn edited the tests together to be played for a deciding committee that included Zaslav, and the casting of Corenswet as Superman and Brosnahan as Lane was announced on June 27. Gunn personally contacted the actors to inform them of their castings, and he offered the role of Superman to Corenswet while he was filming Twisters, 2024, on the condition that he treat everyone involved in the film with kindness and respect, citing his experiences with Chris Pratt, Peter Quill/Star-Lord in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and John Cena, Christopher Smith/Peacemaker in the DCEU, doing the same. Casting for other roles was set to follow, including for members of the superhero team The Authority who were expected to be introduced in Superman, Legacy ahead of a planned film about the team. Brothers Alexander and Bill Skarsgård were on the short list for Luthor. It was unclear whether Hoult would return to try for Luthor again, but Gunn later contacted Hoult about playing Luthor, which he accepted after realizing he was better suited for the role. Corenswet and Brosnahan each earned $750,000 for their roles, while Hoult was the highest paid actor in Superman, earning $2 million. They were all eligible for bonuses based on the film's box office performance. Gunn was paid $15 million for his work on Superman, in addition to his seven-figure salary for his role at DC Studios. On July 11, 2023, the casting of Isabella Merced, Edi Gathaji, and Nathan Fillion, respectively, as the superheroes Kendra Saunders/Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, and Guy Gardner/Green Lantern was announced. Merced tested as Barbara Gordon/Batgirl for the unreleased DCEU film Batgirl, while Fillion starred in several of Gunn's earlier films including as Corey Pitzner/TDK. In the Suicide Squad and had previously voiced fellow Green Lantern Hal Jordan in several animated projects. Gathaji was cast over 200 other actors. Anthony Carrigan, who expressed interest in playing Luthor, was cast as the superhero Rex Mason/Metamorpho the next day. Gunn chose some of these actors some time earlier but had been waiting until Superman and Lane were cast before negotiating further actor deals, leaving little time to complete negotiations before the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike began on July 14. In response to concerns that other superheroes would take away from the story of Superman and Lane, Gunn said those two characters remained the film's focus and the other actors were being cast for multiple DCU projects. He later elaborated that a large cast of characters was included in the film because he wanted to explore Clark Kent's interactions with his colleagues and Superman's interactions with other superheroes, and show how those groups impact the characters' values and choices. When the UGA strike ended in September 2023, Superman: Legacy was expected to begin filming in early to mid-2024. Jason Momoa, who portrayed Aquaman in the DCEU, was reported the following month to have discussed portraying the character Lobo in either this film or a solo film. He was later cast in that role for the DCU film Supergirl, 2026, originally titled Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. The SAG-AFTRA strike ended on November 9, and filming was clarified to be beginning in March 2024. Gunn said the film would still make its July 2025 release date. Maria Gabriela de Faria was revealed to be cast as Angela Spica/The Engineer, one of the film's antagonists and a member of the Authority, in mid-November. Madison Beer said she submitted a self-tape and unsuccessfully auditioned for a role, as did O'Shea Jackson Jr. Hoult was in talks to portray Luthor prior to the SAG-AFTRA strike, and negotiations for the role were continuing in November, when Skyla Gisondo and Sarah Sampaio were revealed to have been respectively cast as Jimmy Olsen and Luthor's assistant Eve Teschmacher. Gunn said Gisondo, Sampaio, and de Faria had been cast prior to the strike, and the roles of Mr. Terrific and Teschmacher were particularly difficult to cast and required many auditions. In December 2023, Gunn's brother Sean was cast as Maxwell Lord for future DCU projects, after Pedro Pascal played the role in the DCEU film Wonder Woman 1984, 2020. The character was expected to be referenced in Superman: Legacy, but it was unknown if he would appear in the film. James Gunn confirmed that Hoult had finalized a deal to portray Luthor, and Miriam Shore entered negotiations for an undisclosed role after appearing in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. The Hollywood Reporter also said the cast included Sean Gunn and Pom Klementieff, who starred in the Guardians of the Galaxy films, before James Gunn stated that Klementieff was not involved in the film and Shore had not been cast. He added that the film's script had been mostly completed before the writers' strike. Gunn said in January that work on the sets, prosthetics, and visual effects models were underway, the costumes were being completed, and most of the actors had been cast. Brosnahan said the film was being made with a lot of love for the source material, as many cast and crew members had grown up watching Superman films and reading the comics. At the end of the month, Millie Alcock was cast as Superman's cousin Kara Zor-El/Supergirl. The character was reported to be making her debut in Superman Legacy ahead of starring in her own DCU film, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Alcock had performed auditions and screen tests in costume on the Superman Legacy set in Atlanta, Georgia, earlier in January. Pre-production work in Ohio began in early February 2024, with the Ohio Department of Development announcing that Superman Legacy would be partially filmed in Cleveland and Cincinnati. The film was awarded over $11 million through the state's tax credit program, based on a $37 million spent in the state out of the film's reported total gross production budget of $363.80 million. Gunn disputed the accuracy of this budget, which would have made it one of the most expensive superhero films ever made. The film was later reported to have a net production budget of $225 million with incentives and tax breaks factored in. Also in February, Bassem Youssef said he had been cast in the film reportedly as Rahman Harjati, the leader of a fictional Middle Eastern country, but his character was removed from the script. He believed this was potentially due to comments he made in October 2023 criticizing the Israeli government during the Gaza war. Gunn disputed this, explaining that he discussed a role with Youssef before the August strike, but the actor had not been formally offered the part, and the character was removed after the strike ended and before Youssef's comments were made. A table read with the cast was held on February 22, and Gunn revealed that Terrence Rosemore was portraying Luthor's henchman Otis Berg after having small roles in some of Gunn's prior films. Zaslav said filming would begin the following week, when Gunn announced that he had shortened the film's title to Superman. He had come to feel while writing the film that it was about looking forward while the Legacy subtitle was about looking backward. Principal photography began on February 29, 2024, which is Superman's birthday in the comic books. Filming took place in the Adventdalen Valley in Svalbard, Norway, for 1 week to shoot scenes featuring the Fortress of Solitude. Gunn chose Svalbard for its natural beauty, landscapes, and similarities to Antarctica, where the fortress is located. Filming occurred under the working title Genesis. Henry Braham returned as cinematographer from the later two Guardians of the Galaxy films, The Suicide Squad, and The Flash. The entire film was shot using IMAX certified red digital cinema cameras. Filming was delayed from an initial January 2024 start by the SAG-AFTRA strike, and was expected to last around 4 months. Effects studio Legacy Effects worked on the film's practical effects, contributing character designs, prosthetic makeup, specialty suits, and animatronics. Wendell Pierce was cast as Perry White at the start of March. Filming at Trilith Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, had begun by March 8, while filming in Cleveland and Cincinnati was set to take 37 days between April 1 and August 23. Filming was also expected to take place in Macon, Georgia. 201 in April, Pruitt Taylor Vince and Neva Howell were cast as Jonathan and Martha Kent, while Beck Bennett, Michaela Hoover, and newcomer Christopher McDonald were cast as Daily Planet employees Steve Lombard, Cat Grant, and Ron Troop in June. Hoover previously appeared in several of Gunn's films. Corenswet and Brosnahan filmed a 12-minute interview scene together, which Gunn described as 10% of the film shot in 2 days, and highlighted their chemistry as palpable. The 1940 film His Girl Friday was a major reference for depicting their relationship as equal matches for each other, with a longing romance and witty comedy inspired by the works of Preston Sturges. Characters from the animated DCU series Creature Commandos, 2024, present, were expected to appear in the film, and Gunn and Safran intended for the same actors to portray characters across animation and live action in the DCU set. Photos revealed that Frank Grillo was reprising his role as Rick Flag Sr. from that series. The production moved to Northeast Ohio on June 14, when filming took place at the Headlands Beach State Park in Mentor, Ohio. 6 weeks of filming took place throughout Cleveland, beginning in downtown Cleveland on June 24. Filming locations included Ontario Street, the Cleveland Greyhound Station, Public Square, the Detroit, Superior Bridge, PNC Plaza, Progressive Field, and Cleveland Arcade. Exterior shots of the Huntington Bank Building, Key Tower, and the Soldiers and Sailors Monument were filmed in Public Square. The exterior of the Leader Building stood in for the headquarters of the Daily Planet, and Key Tower was used as the headquarters for Stag Enterprises. Filming in Cleveland was completed on July 16, when Gunn said there were a couple weeks left of shooting. The production moved to Cincinnati by July 18, taking place at the Cincinnati Museum Center in Union Terminal and in the Lytle Tunnel. Filming wrapped on July 30. In August 2024, Sean Gunn confirmed his casting as Maxwell Lord for the film. The following month, Alan Tudyk was revealed to have a role in the film after voicing several characters in Creature Commandos. Tudyk voices the Superman robot for. Comic book writer Mark Waid revealed that Krypto was appearing in the film, which Gunn officially confirmed in October. He explained that the character's portrayal was inspired by his dog Ozu, who was adopted soon after Gunn began writing Superman, and said Ozu was at first problematic to say the least. "I remember thinking, gosh, how difficult would life be if Ozu had superpowers? And thus Krypto came into the script and changed the shape of the story." Gunn began test screening the film by the start of December. A day and a half of individual pickup shots were scheduled to take place in Los Angeles shortly after, which Gunn said was to enhance the film rather than reshoot any scenes. Alcock was confirmed to be appearing in the film in January 2025. 3 days of pickups had also taken place in Atlanta by the end of May, and Gunn said the film was completed and received a picture lock on June 5. Later that month, Michael Rooker and Clementieff were confirmed to have voiced 2 Superman robots alongside Cooper and Angela Sarafian as Superman's Kryptonian parents Jor-El and Lara Lorvan. William Hoy and Craig Alpert co-edited the film, after they respectively worked on the DC films The Batman and Blue Beetle, 2023. Much of the visual effects team from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 returned to work with Gunn on Superman, including visual effects supervisor Stephen Cioretti. Visual effects were provided by Framestore, Industrial Light and Magic, ILM, and Weta FX. The film features 1,766 visual effects shots. Framestore created Krypto and shared the asset with ILM and Weta, because each studio had Krypto shots to deliver. Framestore also worked on the Fortress of Solitude. ILM scanned the practical build of the Hammer of Boravia, built by Legacy, and developed the full CG version. ILM created Metropolis with New York City as the reference point for scale, style, and density, and used shots filmed in Cleveland to become part of Metropolis. Weta created the Kaiju creature and used ILM's asset of Metropolis for the Kaiju fight sequence. The VFX team created a digital version of Cleveland Public Square so that Weta could make shots that required extensive camera work that could not be achieved with drones, and also created all the interactions of the Kaiju with the environment. In December 2023, Gunn said most of the film's score and major themes had been written, but the composer had not been announced because their deal had not been finalized. In February 2024, he announced that John Murphy was composing the score after doing so for The Suicide Squad, The Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, 2022, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. In December, Gunn confirmed that Murphy was using a new version of John Williams's Superman March theme from the 1978 Superman film. Gunn considered Williams's score to be one of the greatest of all time and had associated his theme with Superman from the start of the film's development. He saw the theme's inclusion as one way for the film to harken back to past iterations. Unlike other projects by Gunn, Superman only features 2 licensed songs, Punk Rocker by Teddy Bears and Iggy Pop, and 5 Years Time by Noah and the Whale. In April 2025, David Fleming was revealed to be contributing some music and sharing credit for the score with Murphy. On the soundtrack, Safran's daughter Lulu performs the Mighty Crabjoys theme with the American rock band Foxy Shazam, with Lulu and the band's member Eric Nally on vocals, and written by Gunn and Nally. For the January 2023 announcement, Gunn used the cover art of All-Star Superman's first issue to represent the film. He also posted the cover on social media in March when confirming that he would direct the film. Gunn marked the beginning of filming in February 2024 by posting a picture of Superman's logo, which commentators noted for its visual similarity to the character's costume in the Kingdom Come comic book, albeit with the classic yellow and red color scheme. Safran promoted the film on stage during Warner Bros.' Cinemacon presentation in April, with Gunn, Corenswet, and Brosnahan appearing via video messages. The panel unveiled a full look at the Superman emblem, and Gunn said he planned to attend the following year's event in person with the cast to initiate a Summer of Superman. Gunn released a first-look image of Corenswet in costume in early May, which depicts Superman suiting up while an alien-looking threat attacks in the background. Commentary on the image focused on the return of red briefs, which were absent from the Man of Steel design. Elements of the costume were also compared to Jim Lee's design used in DC Comics' 2011 New 52 initiative. The character's pose and the attack in the background sparked speculation about Superman's characterization in the film and the threats he may face. A display inspired by the film's Fortress of Solitude was included at Warner Bros.' Licensing Expo booth in Las Vegas later in May. Gunn released the first image of Krypto, alongside Corenswet Superman, in October 2024 in honor of Adopt a Shelter Dog Month. A motion poster was released on December 16 featuring a slowed-down rendition of John Williams's Superman March with an electric guitar opening. Jordan Morrow at Variety described the poster as an homage to Christopher Reeve's portrayal of Superman in the 1978 film, but with quieter, more thoughtful music. A teaser trailer was shown at a press screening that day ahead of a public release on December 19. The trailer had over 250 million global views in its first 24 hours, making it the most viewed and discussed trailer for a DC Comics or Warner Bros. Film in that time period. Watertower Music released Murphy's music for the trailer as a single, titled Theme from Superman, trailer version, later that day. Animal Planet's Puppy Bowl XXI on Super Bowl Sunday in February 2025 was co-sponsored by the film, with Gunn and OZU appearing to introduce new footage. A Krypto Superplay Award was presented to one of the puppies participating in the game. At the end of the month, DC Studios hired Ricky Strauss, a former marketing executive at Apple TV Plus and Disney, to consult on the film's marketing following the exit of Warner Bros. Global Marketing Chief Josh Goldston the prior month. Safran said Zaslav had rallied the entire company behind the film in a similar way to previous successful Warner Bros. Films such as Barbie, 2023. Gunn, Corenswet, Brosnahan, and Hoult promoted the film during Warner Bros.' Cinemacon panel in April 2025, where an extended sequence and new behind-the-scenes footage were shown. The extended footage was later released online and shown before IMAX screenings for the Warner Bros. Film A Minecraft Movie, while the behind-the-scenes footage was released on April 18 to coincide with the anniversary of Superman's debut in Action Comics No. 1, 1938. Commentators highlighted the focus on Krypto and his relationship with Superman in the extended footage, and the behind-the-scenes footage's emphasis on Superman's hopefulness alongside the elaborate sets and costumes. That May, DC Comics and Milk-Bone collaborated on the tie-in comic Superman, A Friendship Unleashed featuring Superman and Krypto to cross-promote the film and the latter's dog Biscuits. The comic was also made available at San Diego Comic-Con that July. An official trailer was released on May 14, which Rafe look at Bleeding Cool called a banger, highlighting its action, humor, and supporting DC characters. He said the trailer proved that Superman was in the right hands with Gunn's interpretation and that it was definitely the Superman we need in our lives, now more than ever. IGN's Wesley Yanpool highlighted Kent and Lane's relationship, and felt the trailer's interview highlighted the ethics of Superman's intervention in a foreign war, which Polygon's Michael McWherter also commented upon, noting that the trailer questioned if Superman's actions represented American values. The children's book Superman, Friends and Foes, and a prequel junior novel, Superman, Welcome to Metropolis, were both released in early June. Friends and Foes. features the Hammer of Boravia as well as Metamorpho and his son Joey, following speculation about their roles from trailer footage, while Welcome to Metropolis explores the early career of Clark and Lois at the Daily Planet, the Justice Gang members, and features the character Metallo. A final trailer was released on June 11, 1 month before the film's release. Jermaine Lucie of Gizmodo called it the most revealing trailer to date and highlighted the trailer's visual effects and action sequences and its depiction of Luthor's hatred for Superman. Total Films' George Marston speculated that Superman would be working both with and against the Justice Gang based on scenes of him collaborating with Mr. Terrific and Gardner being at odds with Superman, while Escobedo Valenzuela from MovieWeb felt Luthor's initial monologue being superseded by Superman's optimism was a brilliant way to construct this trailer. The first 30 minutes of the film were shown at Cine Europe in Barcelona on June 17, and in Manila on June 19, as the start of the Superman World Tour, which took place in 7 major international cities leading up to the film's release. Veda Luna Zabala at Nylon Manila described the footage as fun, colorful, and hopeful, and highlighted Hoult's performance. An 11 feet, 3.4 m, tall Superman statue modeled after Corenswet was suspended at the top of the Shard in London on July 1, encouraging pedestrians to look up. This was the largest public sculpture to be displayed in the United Kingdom, and it took 4 months to craft. 25 pop-up Daily Planet newsstand kiosks were also installed at multiple locations throughout London. Warner Brothers hosted a fan event for Superman on July 2, at Cineworld Leicester Square in London. The film partnered with Fandango and Amazon Prime for early access theatrical screenings on July 8, which became Fandango's best-selling first-day pre-sale tickets for that year, surpassing the general pre-sale tickets for Marvel's The Fantastic Four: First Steps, also releasing that month. The Lola Cars Formula E team ran a special livery based on the film for the 2025 Berlin E-Prix. Funko and McFarlane Toys also released action figures based on the film. The Hollywood Reporter reported that DC Studios and Warner Brothers could spend approximately $200 million on marketing for a total cost around $400 million with the production budget, though Variety reported that marketing cost $125 million. Leading up to the film's release and amid the mass deportations during the second presidency of U.S. President Donald Trump, Gunn said that Superman is the story of America and an immigrant that came from other places and populated the country, but for me it is mostly a story that says basic human kindness is a value and is something we have lost. This received backlash from some supporters of Trump and members of the MAGA movement, with some pundits on Fox News calling the film super woke. Gunn responded that Superman was for everyone, explaining that it was about kindness, and I think that's something everyone can relate to. Superman premiered at the TCL Chinese Theater on July 7, 2025, and was released theatrically by Warner Brothers Pictures internationally on July 9, and in the United States and China on July 11, in IMAX Real D 3D, Dolby Cinema 279 Screen X, and 4DX. In January 2025, the estate of Superman co-creator Joe Shuster filed a lawsuit against WBD, asserting that the rights to distribute the film in some international territories had reverted to them based on different copyright laws, the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Australia in 2017, and Canada in 2021. 2 months later, WBD filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit, citing prior copyright lawsuits being rejected, and it was dismissed in April, due to a lack of jurisdiction. The lawsuit was refiled with the New York Supreme Court a month later, with an injunction requested, but the motion was denied in early June. The film was released for digital download on August 15, 2025, and was released on the Warner Brothers streaming service HBO Max on September 19, after a respective 35-day and a 70-day theatrical window, followed by Ultra HD Blu-ray, and DVD on September 23. The home media releases include deleted scenes, a making-of documentary, a commentary by Gunn, the first short of the animated series Crypto Saves the Day, and various featurettes. Gunn said Superman was released early on digital platforms to allow audiences to watch it before the second season of Peacemaker, 2025, which connects to the film. The film accumulated 13 million global viewers within its first 10 days on HBO Max, which was the highest amount for that period for a pay-one film on that service since Barbie in December 2023. Superman's streaming release also prompted increased viewership for other Superman films around that time, including the documentary Super/Man, the Christopher Reeve story, 2024, the 1978 Superman film, Superman Returns, 2006, and Man of Steel. Superman grossed $354.2 million in the United States and Canada, and $264.5 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $618.7 million. It became the highest-grossing superhero film of 2025 and the first DC film to surpass all Marvel films released within a single year since The Dark Knight in 2008, which Humberto Gonzalez at The Wrap described as a stunning reversal of fortune for Marvel. According to Variety, the film was expected to earn a theatrical profit of approximately $125 million, while Bloomberg Businessweek and The Wrap both reported that the film earned over $100 million in profit through a combination of ticket sales, online home media rentals, and merchandise partnerships. At the start of June 2025, The Wrap estimated that Superman needed to gross more than $500 million worldwide to become profitable at the box office, but that it would need to earn around $700 million to be considered a success, a notion which Gunn disputed. The Hollywood Reporter estimated that the film could have a domestic opening weekend of around $175 million and a potential global total of over $1 billion, based on the first full trailer's engagement metrics, while noting its production and marketing costs accounted for a total of around $400 million. 3 weeks ahead of the film's release, Superman was projected to earn $125 to $145 million or approximately $135 million in its domestic opening weekend, which would be higher than the debut of Man of Steel, $116 million. DC Studios and Warner Brothers estimated a more conservative debut of $90 to $125 million, while the potential $175 million debut remained projected, which would surpass the debut of Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, $166 million, as the biggest opening for a DC film. In the week of release, Deadline Hollywood projected the film's domestic opening gross to be around $115 to $130 million. On July 10, Deadline Hollywood reported the film earned $2.8 million from Tuesday previews for an estimated total $21 million including Thursday previews. Final Thursday previews would see the film make $22.5 million, when counting both theatrical and Tuesday Amazon Prime screenings, $2.8 million. This was, at the time, the best preview box office for any film released in the year 2025 before The Fantastic Four: First Steps surpassed it 2 weeks later, as well as a record for any film involving Gunn. This was also higher than the previous preview box office record Warner Brothers achieved with Barbie. The film was now projected to make $115 to $121 million at the domestic box office during its opening weekend, and over $210 million worldwide during this time as well. The film made $56.5 million on its first day, the second highest of 2025, behind a Minecraft movie. It ended up debuting to $125 million, finishing atop the box office, and becoming the biggest opening weekend for a standalone Superman film ahead of Man of Steel, as well as the second biggest opening weekend for a film featuring Superman, behind Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. It also scored the third highest opening weekend for a 2025 film, behind a Minecraft movie and Lilo and Stitch. In its second weekend, the film remained in first place, grossing $57 million. This marked a 54% drop, which was deemed better than other superhero films of 2025. Up until that point, such American Samoa Captain America, Brave New World, 68%, and Thunderbolts *, 56%, attributed to positive word of mouth, with Comscore analyst Paul Dergarabian pointing out that the film's second weekend drop is indicative of a marketplace that's embracing the film. In its third weekend, the film was dethroned by newcomer The Fantastic Four: First Steps, finishing second, earning $24.9 million, a 57% drop. By the end of July, Superman became the first DC film since The Batman, 2022, to earn over $300 million domestically, and in late August, it became the first DC film, also since The Batman, to earn $600 million globally. While still earning over $1 million domestically in an already reduced wide release of 1,187 theaters in week 9, the film was cut back to 390 theaters in week 10, and pulled from domestic theaters after week 12. In its opening weekend, the film made an estimated $95 million from international markets, for a total gross of $220 million. The film's highest grossing territories include the United Kingdom, $9.8 million, Mexico, $8.8 million, China, $6.6 million, Brazil, $5.9 million, Australia, $5.3 million, France, $4.2 million, Korea, $4.2 million, India, $3.8 million, Spain, $2.9 million, and Japan, $2.5 million. Its perceived underperformance outside of the United States and Canada, particularly in markets like China, where it debuted in 4th place, was partially attributed to the character's American patriotic roots, with David A. Gross from the Frankie Sear movie consulting firm stating Superman has always been identified as a quintessentially American character and story, and in some parts of the world, America is currently not enjoying its greatest popularity. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 83% of 502 critics' reviews are positive. The website's consensus reads, "Pulling off the heroic feat of fleshing out a dynamic new world while putting its champions big, beating heart front and center, this Superman flies high as a man of tomorrow grounded in the here and now." Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 68 out of 100, based on 58 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Critics found the film to be fun, colorful, and earnest, although some felt it was overstuffed with characters and ideas. The performances of Corenswet, Brosnahan, and Hoult were praised. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an A+ to F scale, the same as Man of Steel. Those surveyed by Post-Track gave it an 86% positive score, and 74% said they would definitely recommend it. IGN rated the film 8/10, calling it wonderfully entertaining and heartfelt. Scott Phillips of Forbes praised its colorful visuals, humor, and light-hearted tone. Trace Sover of Awardswatch welcomed its no origin story, no crossover approach. Jake Cole of Slant magazine argued the character endures because he transcends passing trends. Cody Derricks of Next Best Picture felt the casting is as pitch-perfect as Christopher Reeves was decades ago. Writing for NPR, Glenn Weldon gave the film a positive review, stating that it delivers a Superman deeply in touch with his humanity, and perfectly representative of the essence of the character. Liz Shannon Miller of Consequence called it a movie that doesn't sacrifice its titular character in service to franchise building. Instead, it focuses on celebrating the values that Superman himself has embodied from the beginning. William Bibiani of The Wrap wrote, "James Gunn tried to make a great Superman movie, one that embraces the wonder of the character as an action hero and a moral paragon, which derives its drama from how people react to his faith in us. He succeeded." Nicholas Barber at BBC Culture gave the film 3 stars out of 5, and wrote, "It takes some gall to make a zillion-dollar Hollywood blockbuster that feels so much like an eccentric sci-fi B-movie." Alyssa Wilkinson of the New York Times called it a goofy yet charming take and compared it to Iron Man, 2008. Variety's Owen Gleiberman praised the performances and gave it a positive review. David Crow of Den of Geek said the film achieves true grace when it narrows its focus to Lois and Clark. Among more negative reviews, Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian gave the film 2 stars out of 5, criticizing its pointless, cluttered backstory and yet another CGI city-leveling finale. In a 2 out of 5 review for Empire, Sophie Butcher described it as bold and bright and full of color and cosmic invention, but added that the final act sinks into CGI chaos, with an unsatisfying climax, an eye-roll-inducing reveal, a restlessly intermittent tone, and an insistence on prioritizing things and people we don't really care about over core characters. Eric Kane gave the film 2 out of 5 for Forbes, writing that the massive cast finds itself in an overstuffed, badly paced plot and that the story moves from one action sequence to the next, racing forward at a breakneck pace that leaves little room for character development. Mark Kermode described the film as tonally all over the place and messy, but that the film was unexpectedly good fun and overall enjoyable. The film features a war between the fictional nations of Boravia, an aggressor backed by Luthor, and the United States and its neighbor Jarhanpur, which some critics argue mirrors the real-world dynamics of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, particularly the Gaza war that began in 2023. Gunn has maintained that the script predated the war and was not intended as an allegory. In June 2025, Gunn said he had begun writing a follow-up to Superman that would not be a direct sequel, but would feature Superman in a major role. Corenswet and Brosnahan had options for a potential sequel, but following Superman's release in July, a direct sequel was not expected to be imminently announced. In August, Zaslav confirmed that Gunn was writing and directing the next film in the Super family, which Gunn said he had finished writing a script treatment for. He described it as the next story in the Superman saga and hoped to begin production soon. Gunn announced in September that the film was titled Man of Tomorrow and was scheduled for release on July 9, 2027. Corenswet and Hoult were expected to reprise their roles, with Brosnahan, Gisondo, Merced, Grillo, DeFaria, and Sampaio also returning, alongside Aaron Pierre reprising his role of the Green Lantern John Stewart from the DCU television series Lanterns, 2026. Upon the film's announcement, Gunn said he had finished a draft of the script, and described Man of Tomorrow as much a Lex movie as it is a Superman movie, and said it would include the pair working together against a bigger threat. Lars Eidinger was cast as the film's antagonist Brainiac in December. Filming is scheduled to start in mid-April 2026 at Trilith Studios in Georgia, and will last until mid-2026, taking place in Macon, Georgia, Cincinnati, Ohio, and the United Kingdom. Also in July 2025, Gunn was reported to be considering spin-off television series based on supporting characters from the film, such as Gathagee's Mr. Terrific and Gisondo's Jimmy Olsen. The Olsen series was announced in November, when Dan Perrault and Tony Yacine were revealed as the writers, executive producers, and showrunners, along with Gisondo reprising his role. The series, which will debut on HBO Max, is presented as a true crime docuseries hosted by Olsen as he and other Daily Planet reporters investigate supervillains, with Gorilla Grodd the focus for the first season. The series was reportedly titled DC Crime, but Gunn debunked this shortly after. It's been 3 years since Superman first flew over the skies of Metropolis. In that time, the citizens of that fair city have come to adore him. Defending truth and justice, the caped Kryptonian has made the world a sunnier place. But storm clouds gather on the horizon. Superman single-handedly ended a war between two countries before it began, saving countless lives. But his unsanctioned interference in geopolitics has the US government looking at him sideways, unsure if their interests truly align. Even if he saved lives as ace reporter and Soup's significant other, Lois Lane, tells him there will be repercussions for his actions. Someone who requires no provocation to despise Superman is Lex Luthor. Forget this extraterrestrial outsider, he says. Lex thinks the people of Earth should reserve their adulation for one of their own, why not him? Lex wants the world to see this Man of Steel as he does an interloper whose very presence weakens humanity. And Lex hasn't been idle. Ever since Superman arrived on the scene, Lex has dedicated the full force of his Machiavellian mind to causing his rival's downfall, and now, he has all he needs to do so. Can Superman stay true to his virtuous convictions as Lex turns the tide of public opinion against him? Superman has super strength, super speed, flight, X-ray vision, and more powers besides. But those are little use against Luthor's media machine. No, in the end, his greatest strength might just be his humanity. Actor David Corenswet delivers a heroic Superman that is unabashed, sincere, and easy to root for. This Man of Steel is powerful but not invincible. And no, I'm not only referencing the character's vulnerability to kryptonite. As such, Superman's deeds feel more selfless, more heroic, when he puts himself in harm's way to protect others. Even in the heat of battle, his concern is to minimize or outright prevent collateral damage, and we see him save several people. And though his abilities could garner him great power and influence, he chooses instead to serve humanity and help the world be a better place. We are given the impression that much of Superman's goodness and moral compass was cultivated by his adoptive human parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent. When Superman doubts himself and his identity, Jonathan gives him loving advice and encouragement. Lois, Jimmy Olsen, and others from the Daily Planet work to exonerate Superman from false accusations. Other superheroes step up to defend the world from evildoers. Superman cares for animals, including a super dog called Krypto, and Krypto helps Superman out on several occasions. The film opens with some script referring to an era of gods and monsters. A superhero says that his colleagues are of the cloth, by which he means they all wear costumes. One person is referred to as a choir boy, and another character chides someone by saying, "Yeah, of little faith." Superman and Lois Lane are 3 months into a romantic relationship. They share some passionate kisses and are said to be hooking up. Lex accuses Superman of putting on a nice guy routine to groom the people of Earth into becoming subject to him. It's alleged that Superman was encouraged to take as many wives as possible after arriving on Earth, and Lex posits the idea that the Man of Steel has a secret harem, and this becomes an odd running joke for the rest of the film. Jimmy is presented as a ladies' man, and several women ogle and flirt with him throughout the film. One woman leaps into his arms and wraps her legs around his middle, and she earlier expresses the hope that they can spend the weekend together. Other characters make suggestive comments. Women wear form-fitting clothing, some of which shows cleavage. A character is called a hot X and sexy. 2 people proclaim their love for one another. Another pair commiserates about their romantic situations. Superman contains plenty of comic book action and violence but, fortunately, keeps casualties to a minimum. We can thank Superman himself for this, who works hard to prevent needless casualties. Most imperiled people are either saved or clear of danger before any buildings start to fall. But some moments can get intense. A few characters die. One man is threatened with a gun before being shot and killed. His death is viewed from a distance, but it's still pretty grim. As mentioned above, Superman is not invulnerable and endures a fair bit of punishment. When we first see our hero, he crashes into the ground, bloodied and injured. Lex imprisons his foes, even some ex-girlfriends, in a pocket universe. He manipulates others to do his bidding, including holding a man's son hostage. He chucks things at those who displease him. And he risks the lives of millions, if not billions, of people to best Superman. Superheroes and villains trade thunderous punches. One tries to suffocate another with a swarm of nanobots. Though it doesn't succeed, it's not pleasant to watch the intended victim vomit the nanobots back up. Buildings crumble and collapse. One country invades another with tanks and soldiers. Someone has his teeth knocked out. A character's arm is broken, and he painfully pops it back into place. We hear that a man tortured a dog. Though the dog in question bears no ill effects. Though Superman himself sticks to milder expletives, save for a few particular instances when he's quoting someone else, the same cannot be said for the other residents of Metropolis. We hear more than 10 variations of the S-word. God's name is taken in vain 9 times, paired once with D. Jesus' name is abused once. In one scene, a character who can create shapes and objects with his superpower manifests several hands giving a rude hand gesture. Daily Planet editor-in-chief Perry White is rarely seen without a cigar in his mouth. We are told that the Earth's yellow sun prevents Kryptonians from getting drunk. We see a character stagger into a room, apparently drunk. Lex created his pocket universe by, according to him, replicating the Big Bang. He recognizes his envy of Superman but views it as the calling needed to rid the world of the superhero. Superman is roughly treated when detained by the government and is told that, as an alien, he doesn't have human rights. One superhero puts nanobots in his friend's blood so he can track them. We later learn that a character is a clone. With Superman, writer-director, and architect of the current DC film slate, James Gunn delivers a bright and breezy film that harkens back to an earlier era of the Man of Steel. This Superman owes a great debt to 1978's Superman, the movie, and not just because Gunn makes frequent use of John Williams' classic theme. Not that I'm complaining. The movie is sillier than I expected, leaning into Silver Age comic book camp. Viewers' mileage may vary, but I found the movie's tone to be equal parts charming and dissonant. David Corenswet's Superman is virtuous, self-sacrificial, kind, compassionate, and is constantly trying to do the right thing. But he's also flawed and vulnerable in ways that don't detract from the character's goodness. In fact, they make him relatable. Superman is not a hero because he is perfect, but because he strives to be good. And the film champions his goodness without cynicism. Rachel Brosnahan is pitch perfect as Lois Lane, while Nicholas Hoult does a fine job playing the egotistical and menacing Lex Luthor. The movie is at its best when Superman wrestles with the implications of his dual heritage and champions the surprising strength of his humanity. However, those strong moments are often crowded out in a script that feels overstuffed. An overabundance of characters and plot points distract from the film's message. I found myself wanting to spend more time with Superman and the people closest to him, especially those who really speak to the heart of the story. Story gripes aside, Superman also contains harsher language than you might expect. Comparable perhaps to a current MCU movie, yes, but if you hold higher expectations for Superman, and his movies, you might be disappointed. Some suggestive dialogue is sprinkled throughout the movie. And the expected superhero action and violence can ramp up in intensity in certain moments. So, is Superman a super film for families? I'd say it follows its titular hero's example, imperfect, and at times off the mark, but earnestly striving for good. Superman is a reimagination of the famous comic book superhero where Superman's early arch-nemesis, billionaire Lex Luthor, uses a super-powerful meta-human to defeat and eventually try to kill Superman and rule the world, but he also manages to turn the people of America, and the world, against the superhero. Writer/director James Gunn packs Superman with lots of exciting physical and emotional jeopardy as Superman and his friends work to overcome Lex Luthor's evil plans, but the movie changes Superman's origin story in a significant way that destroys the original story's biblical allusions to Moses and Jesus, creates a politically correct but self-contradictory pro-immigration theme, and has some gratuitous obscenities and too gratuitous, unnecessary, and annoying strong profanities, so Movie Guide registered. Advises strong and extreme caution. The movie opens with a title card. It says, 3 centuries ago, the first meta-humans appeared on Earth 3 decades ago, Kal-aka Clark Kent crashed on Earth 3 years ago, Superman made his debut 3 minutes ago, Superman lost his first battle. With that, Superman crashes onto the icy landscape of Antarctica. Bleeding and unable to walk, Superman whistles for his dog, Krypto. Krypto soon appears, but all he wants to do is jump on top of Superman and play. Between gasps of pain, Superman manages to grab his cape and shot it to Krypto while saying, "Home." Krypto finally gets the idea and drags Superman to Ho's Fortress of Solitude, which rises out of the ice. A huge door with Superman's family logo opens, and Krypto drags Superman inside, where Superman's tended to by a group of robots. The robots carry Superman to a couch, where they let him soak up rays from Earth's yellow sun, which starts to restore Superman's powers. To soothe Superman while that's happening, the head robot, Gary, plays for Superman the original recording from his parents on Krypton about his home planet. However, the recording abruptly ends, having been damaged when Superman's rocket ship crashed to Earth. Superman decides to return to the battle with only 83% of his power back. He orders Krypto to stay at the fortress. Back in Metropolis, the movie reveals that, without consulting the United States government, Superman stopped an Eastern European country, Boravia, from invading a smaller, defenseless country. So, Boravia has enlisted the help of a masked, armored meta-human named the Boravian Hammer to attack Metropolis in revenge. The Hammer seems to be more powerful than Superman. In fact, he's the one behind all of Superman's injuries. Not only that, but Lex Luthor is controlling the Hammer, with the intent of deceiving and eventually killing Superman. Having defeated Superman for the time being, the Hammer has left Metropolis but promises to return to destroy it. Posing as Clark Kent, Superman returns to the Daily Planet. It turns out Superman and Lois Lane have been in a secret romantic relationship for the past 3 months. Lois knows all about Superman's other identity as mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent. That night, they have an argument about whether Superman was right in stopping Boravia's invasion. Superman is more idealistic about his interference, but Lois questions whether it was the prudent and right thing to do. The next day, Lex Luthor instigates a diversion in Metropolis. He creates a giant dinosaur monster to attack the city. While Superman and 3 superhero friends, the Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific, fight the monster, Lex Luthor follows his 2 minions, the Boravian Hammer without his armor and a meta-human female who's actually a human-machine creature or cyborg merged with powerful nanobots, to Antarctica. They've tracked Superman to the place where the Fortress of Solitude lies hidden under the ice. Mysteriously, the fortress rises from the ice and the doors surprisingly spring open for Lex and his 2 supervillains to enter. After destroying the robots inside and muzzling Krypto the dog with nanobots, they uncover a surprising fact that will destroy Superman's reputation with the people of America and the world. Superman will need the help of Lois, his superhero friends and even Krypto the dog to defeat Lex Luthor and restore his reputation. Writer/director James Gunn packs Superman with lots of exciting physical and emotional jeopardy. Superman, Lois Lane, and their 3 superhero friends, the Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific and Hawkgirl face incredible danger as they work to stop Lex Luthor's evil plans. Also, the opening with Krypto is pretty funny and unique, a quality that many of Gunn's movies share, especially his Guardians of the Galaxy movies for Marvel. Gunn is now leading DC's new superhero movies, and DC hopes his creative energy will help DC's new superhero movies compete better with Marvel. Superman has other comical moments that lighten the story. For example, Nathan Fillion of Firefly, The Rookie, and Castle plays the Green Lantern as an abrasive, overconfident jerk. He wants to name Superman and the other 2 superheroes as the Justice Gang, but the others disagree, and this becomes a running joke in the movie, with a funny payoff at the very end. Of course, eventually the group will add other superheroes, including Batman, and be known as the Justice League. Superman also has some heartfelt, touching moments. These moments reflect a strong pro-American, morally uplifting attitude. The best of these moments come when Superman must travel to his adoptive American parents' farm in Kansas to hide from Lex Luthor's minions and recover. While there, he seeks advice from his father, Jonathan Kent. His father restores Superman's confidence, including his decision to stop Boravia invasion. He expresses pride in his adopted son's actions since leaving the farm. He also tells Superman that a parent's job is not to decide everything for their children but give them the tools to make the right decisions. Your choices, your actions, that's what makes you who you are, Superman's father adds. Ironically, the scenes with Superman's father contradict the movie's politically correct pro-immigration theme, which has been touted by Gunn and his movie star, David Corenswet, who plays Superman, in recent press interviews. Their comments have generated some public controversy. Many liberals and radicals in Hollywood have virulently opposed the efforts of politicians like President Donald Trump to control illegal immigrants. In the movie, however, a twist reveals that Superman's parents had some ulterior, negative motives for sending their son to Earth. Not only that, but it turns out that Superman's positive values and compassionate instincts to help other people come not from his biological parents from a foreign planet but actually come from the American parents who adopted him. Thus, the movie actually reveals there are good reasons for people to be concerned about the impact that immigrants can have on their homeland. It also reveals that the American heartland has a culture that fosters good values in the people who live there and in the children who are raised there. As many people know, the original Jewish creators of the Superman comic books, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, inserted biblical themes into their creation. Thus, Superman's story carries allegorical or symbolic similarities to the story of Moses and to the depiction of the Messiah in the Hebrew Scriptures. There are also obvious symbolic connections to the story of Jesus Christ, since, after all, Jesus is the Messiah and fulfills more than 300 messianic prophecies, according to the New Testament scriptures and the best biblical scholars. By inserting negative motives into the story of Superman's parents in his movie, writer/director James Gunn has diluted these biblical themes in his version of Superman. This sadly has the effect of reducing the gravity and power of the iconic Superman story. Over the last few decades, Hollywood has seen a rise in superhero movie franchises, namely, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But while the Marvel franchise has soared to spectacular heights, DC has struggled to reach comparable peaks. However, that all seems poised to change with James Gunn's Superman. Under previous regimes, the DC Extended Universe failed to find its footing. Although there were some hits, like the well-reviewed Wonder Woman and the $1 billion success of Aquaman, it always seemed like the DCEU was stumbling a few steps, if not more, behind the MCU. Enter James Gunn and Peter Safran, who were hired to head DC Studios. Now, DC Studios is launching their new, quasi-rebooted DC Universe franchise, picking and choosing elements from the defunct DCEU for their nascent superhero world. One of those rebooted elements is Gunn's Superman, with David Corenswet taking over the role of Clark Kent and his superhero alter ego from Henry Cavill. Gunn, who wrote and directed Superman, is no stranger to superhero franchises, having made a name for himself by launching the cosmic side of the MCU with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. After 2 successful sequels, Gunn departed Marvel and is spearheading the creative side of the DCU, starting off with the franchise's biggest and most important release. Gunn taking on one of DC's most iconic characters and leading a whole franchise was an interesting choice. The filmmaker has an offbeat sense of humor and a unique storytelling approach that doesn't always work for me. But I've always appreciated the way he cares about his characters. That, more than anything else, comes through in Superman. At its heart, Superman is a story about wrestling with identity, especially in a world where so much perception of self can be dictated by those around us, whether that's our parents, social media, or other loved ones. Gunn brings his typical humor, which is softened a bit for broader audiences, and his flair for fun, exciting action scenes. In the end, Superman is a superhero movie for everyone. It's impossible to talk about Gunn's Superman without discussing its place in the larger superhero movie landscape. Much has been said about superhero movie fatigue and the struggles of the MCU in recent years, particularly Marvel's declining box office returns. It would seem like a tough arena to launch a new superhero franchise, but Superman is exactly what we need. Although the DCU is only a quasi-reboot, there's nothing audiences need to know or projects they have to have watched before seeing Superman. You don't even need to be familiar with the Superman character and his origin story to enjoy Gunn's movie. Although Gunn skips the full Kal/Clark Kent origin story, it's explained well enough for newcomers to understand. Superman is a refreshing entry in the superhero film genre because it requires so little homework. Undoubtedly, there's something rewarding about a movie like Thunderbolts*, which capitalizes on its characters' histories in the franchise, but after so many years of needing prior knowledge for superhero movies, it's nice to go into Superman and see a fresh start, and without the tired origin story. Gunn's Superman script is a clever superhero romp, but the actors bringing it to life are perfectly cast. David Corenswet deftly showcases a multifaceted version of the Man of Steel, from the unassuming Clark Kent to the passionate Superman. There's an incredible warmth to his iteration of the character that harkens back to classic interpretations, and will make him a new favorite. Rounding out the core cast are Rachel Brosnahan's Lois Lane and Nicholas Hoult's Lex Luthor, both of which bring out different sides of Superman. Corenswet and Brosnahan's chemistry pops on screen, ensuring their relationship feels real and emotional. Similarly, Corenswet and Hoult have a fascinating dynamic that crackles with an antagonistic tension, making them compelling arch-enemies. He's part of the Justice Gang, alongside Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner/Green Lantern and Isabella Merced's Hawkgirl, but he's wildly entertaining. All the superheroes have interesting interpersonal relationships that add depth to Superman's world, but Mr. Terrific is the most interesting of the bunch. Beyond the superheroes, there's also a cast of characters populating the Daily Planet who have much less to do, but equally flesh out the world of Gunn's DC universe. My only real disappointment with Superman is that some of the supporting characters felt a little underdeveloped, but considering the movie is about Corenswet's hero, it's understandable. Ultimately, Superman is the perfect summer blockbuster. It has plenty of action, humor, and heart to keep audiences engaged for the little over 2-hour runtime, while offering something unlike any other superhero movie we've seen before. Gunn has managed to take a well-known, beloved character and give him a refreshingly original story that stays true to its roots. I had high hopes for Superman, both as a new take on the DC icon and as the launchpad for the DC universe, and Gunn's film managed to reach or surpass all of them. There were enough surprises that are sure to please even the most die-hard of fans, even as Superman remains a movie sure to be entertaining for the whole family. It's a classic-feeling superhero movie without feeling tired. As such, Superman is sure to be a crowd-pleaser for those who have spent the last 3 decades watching superhero movies, and for those who are new to the genre or have fallen off in recent years. After watching Superman, I'm more excited than ever to see what Gunn and Safran do with the DC universe. James Gunn has always seemed like a strange choice to bring Superman back to the big screen. Superman is a squeaky clean character who fights for truth, justice, and always doing the right thing. Gunn got his start with Troma Entertainment, known for their gory horror comedies, went on to direct movies like Slither and Super, a superhero parody about a vigilante who beats people to a pulp with a wrench, and even his own takes on superhero films, which he says aren't actual superhero films, have been extremely unconventional. The Guardians of the Galaxy films expanded the MCU off our world with a strange group of heroes, while 2021's The Suicide Squad took DC's villains and made them into an unorthodox team, and found a way to improve one of the most maligned films in the DCEU in the process. Thematically, nothing about Gunn screams Superman. For years, it seemed like this combination could be a real miscalculation of filmmaker and project, and potentially get the new DCU off on the wrong foot. But what makes Gunn such a perfect choice for Superman is his ability to look at a project or character and present it in an entirely new fashion that is wholly his own, but still fits in line with that world. We've seen so many different iterations of Superman for almost 90 years, to the point that he's a character that needs a new perspective, like Gunn can provide. This combination of Gunn and Superman might seem like a wild choice, but Superman proves that this is a tremendous collaboration, creating one of the most optimistic, playful, ludicrous, and downright fun Superman films in decades, maybe ever. Right out of the gate, Superman does away with any semblance of an origin story, hitting us with the facts right away. We're in a world where meta-humans have existed for centuries, and 3 decades ago, a Kryptonian who now goes by Superman, David Corenswet, landed on Earth. 3 years ago, Superman made himself known and has been helping mankind ever since. But as Superman begins, he has just lost his first fight. Even though Superman always has the best of intentions, the world's perception of him has been changing. After involving himself in the country of Boravia's invasion of Jarhanpur, questions have started to arise about Superman working unchecked in the world. This hasn't been helped by Lex Luthor, Nicholas Hoult, who is actively trying to sully the name of Superman, and who feels like the world hasn't been right since the superhero showed up on the scene. Meanwhile, Superman's alter ego, Clark Kent, is a reporter for the Daily Planet, and has been dating Lois Lane, Rachel Brosnahan, for 3 months now. Lois knows about Clark's double life and also questions how the world will see him when he decides to take matters into his own hands without any oversight. But this is just the tip of the iceberg of everything Superman has going on. Superman also introduces several heroes that occasionally aid Superman in battle: Mr. Terrific, Edi Gathaji, Hawkgirl, Isabella Merced, and the cocky Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, Nathan Fillion, as well as Clark's co-workers at the Daily Planet, like reporter Jimmy Olsen, Skyla Gisondo, editor-in-chief Perry White, Wendell Pierce, and sports writer Steve Lombard, Beck Bennett, just to name a few. Superman has everything from smear campaigns, pocket dimensions, 2 pairs of parents, gigantic monsters, and the cutest super dog you've ever seen in crypto. Superman is throwing a lot at the audience, but for the most part, it all comes together in a way that surprisingly works. With Superman, James Gunn is dismantling a lot of the preconceived notions we've always had about the titular character. He's often seen as the boring ideal of a superhero, an infallible god on Earth who becomes our protector. But Gunn hacks away at these ideas, pinpointing the aspects that have held back previous films from making Superman intriguing, and breathes new life into a character that has become the standard for what we expect a superhero to be. Under Gunn's supervision, Superman is fallible. We meet him as he's losing his first fight, and just because it's nearly impossible to kill Superman doesn't mean he can't get his ass kicked badly. He might do his best to save everyone he can, but he doesn't think of the larger worldwide implications of taking matters into his own hands. Superman often doesn't work as an interesting character because he's seen as flawless, but Gunn puts those imperfections front and center, reconfiguring this hero in a way that makes him more compelling, more vulnerable, and yet, with the same desire to do good and fight for justice that has made him such a classic icon. Gunn also leans into the fact that Superman is an alien, which, for a writer-director like Gunn, is a perfect way for him to put his stamp on this character. Unlike any previous live-action Superman film, Gunn entirely leans in on the absurdity and the possibilities of the strangeness of Superman's world. Yes, Metropolis is the kind of place where giant kaiju-like figures just seem to fall out of the sky. But it's also a world where there are other meta-humans like Superman, and that allows Gunn to play with the more unusual, over-the-top, and ridiculous angles that are right in Gunn's wheelhouse. In many ways, this is the Superman we know and love, albeit one who is still trying to make sense of his place in this world. But it's also distinctly Gunn's take on this world that almost didn't seem possible in taking on such a clean-cut, stoic hero. Gunn takes care to make Superman a modern hero, rather than a relic, and his screenplay seems like it could have been written yesterday. The way that Luthor utilizes the internet to help take down Superman makes complete sense in our modern world, shifting the public's perception with just a few clever online videos. It's also hard to watch the invasion of Jarhanpur and not think about current conflicts. Gunn's decision to focus on the fact that Superman is an immigrant who came to this world years ago and showed his importance to Metropolis is yet another smart angle through which Gunn finds the humanity and modernity within this story. In terms of direction, Gunn does quite well balancing everything he has put on his plate, and many moments scream of his handiwork. Some of the best action sequences feature one character facing off against impossible hordes with ease, and it's always so fun to watch Gunn craft those types of scenes. At times, especially when Superman is flying and Gunn keeps the camera tight on Corenswet, the action isn't quite as effective, but these moments are few and far between, and considering everything Gunn is trying to accomplish here, the result is more than impressive. James Gunn has always seemed like a strange choice to bring Superman back to the big screen. Superman is a squeaky clean character who fights for truth, justice, and always doing the right thing. Gunn got his start with Troma Entertainment, known for their gory horror comedies, went on to direct movies like Slither and Super, a superhero parody about a vigilante who beats people to a pulp with a wrench, and even his own takes on superhero films, which he says aren't actual superhero films, have been extremely unconventional. The Guardians of the Galaxy films expanded the MCU off our world with a strange group of heroes, while 2021's The Suicide Squad took DC's villains and made them into an unorthodox team, and found a way to improve one of the most maligned films in the DCEU in the process. Thematically, nothing about Gunn screams Superman. For years, it seemed like this combination could be a real miscalculation of filmmaker and project, and potentially get the new DCU off on the wrong foot. But what makes Gunn such a perfect choice for Superman is his ability to look at a project or character and present it in an entirely new fashion that is wholly his own, but still fits in line with that world. We've seen so many different iterations of Superman for almost 90 years, to the point that he's a character that needs a new perspective, like Gunn can provide. This combination of Gunn and Superman might seem like a wild choice, but Superman proves that this is a tremendous collaboration, creating one of the most optimistic, playful, ludicrous, and downright fun Superman films in decades, maybe ever. Right out of the gate, Superman does away with any semblance of an origin story, hitting us with the facts right away. We're in a world where meta-humans have existed for centuries, and 3 decades ago, a Kryptonian who now goes by Superman, David Corenswet, landed on Earth. 3 years ago, Superman made himself known and has been helping mankind ever since. But as Superman begins, he has just lost his first fight. Even though Superman always has the best of intentions, the world's perception of him has been changing. After involving himself in the country of Boravia's invasion of Jarhanpur, questions have started to arise about Superman working unchecked in the world. This hasn't been helped by Lex Luthor, Nicholas Hoult, who is actively trying to sully the name of Superman, and who feels like the world hasn't been right since the superhero showed up on the scene. Meanwhile, Superman's alter ego, Clark Kent, is a reporter for the Daily Planet, and has been dating Lois Lane, Rachel Brosnahan, for 3 months now. Lois knows about Clark's double life and also questions how the world will see him when he decides to take matters into his own hands without any oversight. But this is just the tip of the iceberg of everything Superman has going on. Superman also introduces several heroes that occasionally aid Superman in battle: Mr. Terrific, Edi Gathaji, Hawkgirl, Isabella Merced, and the cocky Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, Nathan Fillion, as well as Clark's co-workers at the Daily Planet, like reporter Jimmy Olsen, Skyla Gisondo, editor-in-chief Perry White, Wendell Pierce, and sports writer Steve Lombard, Beck Bennett, just to name a few. Superman has everything from smear campaigns, pocket dimensions, 2 pairs of parents, gigantic monsters, and the cutest super dog you've ever seen in crypto. Superman is throwing a lot at the audience, but for the most part, it all comes together in a way that surprisingly works. With Superman, James Gunn is dismantling a lot of the preconceived notions we've always had about the titular character. He's often seen as the boring ideal of a superhero, an infallible god on Earth who becomes our protector. But Gunn hacks away at these ideas, pinpointing the aspects that have held back previous films from making Superman intriguing, and breathes new life into a character that has become the standard for what we expect a superhero to be. Under Gunn's supervision, Superman is fallible. We meet him as he's losing his first fight, and just because it's nearly impossible to kill Superman doesn't mean he can't get his ass kicked badly. He might do his best to save everyone he can, but he doesn't think of the larger worldwide implications of taking matters into his own hands. Superman often doesn't work as an interesting character because he's seen as flawless, but Gunn puts those imperfections front and center, reconfiguring this hero in a way that makes him more compelling, more vulnerable, and yet, with the same desire to do good and fight for justice that has made him such a classic icon. Gunn also leans into the fact that Superman is an alien, which, for a writer-director like Gunn, is a perfect way for him to put his stamp on this character. Unlike any previous live-action Superman film, Gunn entirely leans in on the absurdity and the possibilities of the strangeness of Superman's world. Yes, Metropolis is the kind of place where giant kaiju-like figures just seem to fall out of the sky. But it's also a world where there are other meta-humans like Superman, and that allows Gunn to play with the more unusual, over-the-top, and ridiculous angles that are right in Gunn's wheelhouse. In many ways, this is the Superman we know and love, albeit one who is still trying to make sense of his place in this world. But it's also distinctly Gunn's take on this world that almost didn't seem possible in taking on such a clean-cut, stoic hero. Gunn takes care to make Superman a modern hero, rather than a relic, and his screenplay seems like it could have been written yesterday. The way that Luthor utilizes the internet to help take down Superman makes complete sense in our modern world, shifting the public's perception with just a few clever online videos. It's also hard to watch the invasion of Jarhanpur and not think about current conflicts. Gunn's decision to focus on the fact that Superman is an immigrant who came to this world years ago and showed his importance to Metropolis is yet another smart angle through which Gunn finds the humanity and modernity within this story. In terms of direction, Gunn does quite well balancing everything he has put on his plate, and many moments scream of his handiwork. Some of the best action sequences feature one character facing off against impossible hordes with ease, and it's always so fun to watch Gunn craft those types of scenes. At times, especially when Superman is flying and Gunn keeps the camera tight on Corenswet, the action isn't quite as effective, but these moments are few and far between, and considering everything Gunn is trying to accomplish here, the result is more than impressive. While David Corenswet doesn't have many credits to his name, primarily known for his roles in Pearl, Twisters, and 2020's Netflix series Hollywood, he's a phenomenal choice for both Clark Kent and Superman. Corenswet has to handle quite a bit in taking on this character, whether it's his frustration at this world he's trying to save, the struggles of dealing with the ramifications of his choices, or the fact that he might have met his match in Luthor. He's also just as great as Clark Kent, and we buy that he could also be a fumbling goofball who couldn't be further from what we know of Superman. Corenswet brings a bit of a gee whiz / aw shucks attitude to both of these characters, but he never overdoes it, as if he's simply a country boy who is letting these reminders of his hometown slip out here and there. Corenswet also has fantastic chemistry with Rachel Brosnahan's Lois Lane, and some of the best scenes involve them simply talking to each other, or occasionally, arguing the impact of Superman's choices. Brosnahan's version of Lois certainly feels like an homage to previous takes on the character, particularly Margot Kidder, but she also makes this role entirely her own. She's a badass journalist first and foremost, and that matters more than her love life, and thankfully, it simply wouldn't make sense for her to be a damsel in distress. Nicholas Hoult's Lex Luthor is effectively modern as well, and it's not hard to see a rich maniac using the internet for his own purposes as that much of a stretch. Hoult brings a fury to this character that speaks to a person who has never been told they're not number one, having to deal with someone taking the spotlight from him. Yet Hoult does this by making Lex a character who believes himself wholeheartedly to be in the right, that he's doing the world a favor, while also enacting his nefarious means to stop Superman at any cost. It's always hard to introduce superhero characters that began with such classic performances as 1978's Superman provided, but the combination of Corenswet, Brosnahan, and Hoult is a great triumvirate that grounds the story and gives us some of the best takes on these characters we've seen so far. Gunn is trying to do a lot with Superman, and it shows, and part of that is that there are so many storylines and characters that not all of them can get the time they deserve. The scenes we get at the Daily Planet are delightful, but beyond Brosnahan and the fantastic Skyla Gisondo as Jimmy Olsen, the rest of the team is mostly irrelevant. A shame when you have actors like Beck Bennett, Wendell Pierce, and Michaela Hoover. Gunn makes the Daily Planet a fun place to experience in this world, as the team is used to the sort of monsters that terrorize Metropolis on the regular, but beyond one major scene, we rarely get to see Clark Kent interact with this team. For the most part, almost everyone gets a few moments to shine, despite how crammed this film is. In particular, Edi Gathagee's Mr. Terrific and Anthony Carrigan's Metamorpho get their time in the sun with some great action sequences, but too much is going on to focus on any of the secondary characters. Another duo that would be great to spend more time with is Ma and Pa Kent, played by Neva Howell and Pruitt Taylor Vince. They also help ground Superman into a story about the titular superhero just trying to do what's best and doing what's right in all the tribulations. The Kent family gets a few nice moments together, but again, it would have been great to have even more of them. But the abundance of ideas is the biggest flaw of Superman, and it's especially felt in the third act. Gunn is spinning so many plates, and making them all interesting, but there's still a ton going on as the film is trying to wrap up. Rarely does it feel like Gunn isn't doing justice to any of these plot lines that he's exploring, but there's a lot to balance, and the audience can certainly sense that. However, despite all these characters and all these story elements, it's never as though Gunn is directly trying to set up what's to come. Everything is in service of this story, and while it's entirely likely that Gunn is leading up to future projects, Superman manages to never become a setup for other stories down the line, which is a welcome change from what we expect from modern superhero cinematic universes. Yet it's also incredibly impressive how Gunn not only makes this very much of the present, but also like it's a timeless take on this story. There are plenty of homages to the Christopher Reeve era of Superman, from the opening credits that are a direct reference to the Richard Donner films, to the use of John Williams' score in key moments, and even a cameo from Reeves' son, Will Reeve. But again, what makes this such an effective take on Superman is the desire of Gunn to craft something that is nostalgic for the past and throwing in those homages to the earlier days, while still doing his own thing that feels right in line with this world. It's a delicate line to balance, but Gunn does it incredibly well throughout. Superman is a magnificent feat, a film that makes the Man of Steel fascinating in a way we've rarely seen on film, with a take on the hero that is trenchant, clever, and delightful. Gunn is paying tribute to the past while also making a very clear mark on this world's future, crafting an introduction to the DCU that inherently makes the viewer want to know where this world goes from here. At this point, it's rare for superhero films to give a sense of wonder and a reminder of how beautiful these films can be when executed well. But Gunn has brought optimism, hope, and care back to Superman. It ends up becoming one of the best DC films in years, and one of the best movies of the summer. This universe could be great, and Gunn has the light to show the way for where the DCU could go. One of my favorite scenes in writer/director James Gunn's energetic but scattershot Superman is also one of the simplest. Rachel Brosnahan's Lois Lane comes home to her apartment and finds David Corenswet's Clark Kent cooking her breakfast for dinner as a surprise to celebrate their 3-month anniversary. Clark says that's her favorite. Lois says no, that's your favorite. They're in that awkward and halting but sweet start-up period in a relationship, where one of them is ahead of the other in terms of making a commitment, and they're still getting to know each other. Oh, and then there's the fact that Clark is Superman, and Clark Kent, the Daily Planet journalist, keeps getting exclusive, puff-piece chats with Superman, but Clark agrees to give Lois an on-the-record interview with Superman. The result is a crisply written, well-acted exchange that plays like a modern screwball comedy with serious undertones, as Lois asks Superman fair but tough questions about the ethics of his decision to end a looming war in a foreign land without the approval of the United States government. Good stuff. There are a number of well-executed, dialogue-driven scenes sprinkled among the CGI mayhem and the existential wailing and the chuckle-inducing cameos, and writer-slash-director Gunn admirably leans into the narrative of Superman as the embodiment of the classic American immigrant story, but this first entry in the new DC universe left me with a cinematic fast food vibe. You enjoy the flavors well enough, but you're left feeling as if you've consumed a familiar, empty-calorie, relatively, happy meal. Despite the earnest and effective performances by Corenswet and Brosnahan, and a bounty of colorful turns by the talented supporting cast, the beastly elements of the Gods and Monsters universe come across as leftovers from Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy films, and the battle sequences feel like quick-cut, derivative replicas of fight scenes from dozens of other superhero movies. We're left with a mid-level take on Superman that, at times, will remind you of the 1978 version, but doesn't quite match it for pure pop entertainment value. To writer-slash-director Gunn's credit, Superman doesn't waste time with the origin story we all know, opting to plunge us into a world where our titular superhero is recognized as the most powerful and beloved meta-human on Earth. However, his popularity is in jeopardy after the aforementioned mission, in which he took it upon himself to prevent a war. After losing a battle for the first time, Superman is saved by Krypto the Superdog, who isn't exactly Fortress of Solitude trained and could really use some superhero canine behavioral classes. You know that we're not supposed to take a Superman movie too seriously when the pup enters the equation. Nicholas Hoult gives a cracking good performance as a kind of GQ meets Elon Musk take on Lex Luthor, who oversees an army of technicians at Luthor Corp headquarters, making billions off his defense contracts while obsessing over destroying Superman, as his idiot influencer girlfriend Eve Teschmacher, a very funny Sarah Sampaio, takes selfies in the background. We spend only a few minutes here and there at the planet, with an underused Wendell Pierce as Perry White, while Skyla Gisondo scores some laughs and puts a fresh spin on the young photojournalist Jimmy Olsen. As Luthor manipulates events in a way that has the public turning on Superman, only Batman has seen the public turn against him more often than Superman through various movies over the decades. The already crowded field of supporting players expands to include Michael Holt / Mr. Terrific, Edi Gathegi, Guy Gardner / Green Lantern, Nathan Fillion, sporting that comic book accurate but polarizing bowl cut, and Kendra Saunders / Hawkgirl, Isabella Merced, among others. They're an entertaining trio with some impressive skill sets. Still, the ongoing debate about whether they're calling themselves the Justice Gang and the constant bantering and quipping are well-trod superhero movie territory. When Superman is detained and roughed up by masked agents who slam his face into the pavement before locking him up in a detention center alongside hundreds of other prisoners, including a separated family and a woman whose offense was writing a negative blog about Luthor, the modern-day, real-world parallels are striking and legitimate social commentary. On the lighter side, it's a kick to see a Superman who is so noble, so committed to doing the right thing, that he wonders if an enormous and destructive monster could have been subdued but not killed, perhaps to be released elsewhere. He actually takes the time to rescue a squirrel in the heat of a battle. Kudos to the filmmakers for casting Pruitt Taylor Vince and Neva Howell as Ma and Pa Kent, as opposed to the glam casting of Kevin Costner and Diane Lane in the roles in Man of Steel. The moments Clark shares with the only parents he's ever known are touching and authentic. As for Corenswet, he makes for a charming Superman, but he can't quite match the movie star power of Christopher Reeve, nor does he have the unsettling, laser-focused ferocity of Henry Cavill. We've had nearly a dozen versions of Superman on screens big and small through the decades, and for that matter, about the same number of Lex Luthors. This latest version makes for enjoyable enough popcorn entertainment, but ultimately leaves us wondering, was it even necessary? Gunn was too busy creating the foundations for a whole new cinematic universe based on DC Comics characters to make a good Superman movie. Consequently, his Superman is overstuffed and bloated, so much so, that it's impossible to get an emotional toehold into the story he's telling. In contrast, let me remind you that in 1978 Richard Donner, director of Salt and Pepper, the best Peter Lawford/Sammy Davis Jr. vehicle ever, created the foundations for the entire genre of the superhero movie as we know it and loaded his Superman with unbelievable amounts of heart. This is not to say Gunn's take is devoid of heart. Like I said, among the rubble are gems. Jimmy Olsen and Clark Kent horsing around in the Daily Planet offices. Not kidding, the subplot involving Jimmy could have made a pretty good standalone Maverick journalist movie, an all the president's men kind of thing with Lex Luthor as Nixon. The romantic stuff with Clark/Supes and Lois is sweet without being mushy. Metamorpho, the Element Man, is made a tragic figure in a touching way. And one of my fave comic book characters, Mr. Terrific, is used in ways that even some of the best comic book writers haven't thought of. But these undeniable gems are strewn among and embedded within the broken brickwork of that bombed-out Tiffany's. It's impossible to string them into the beautiful necklace they could have and should have been. Gunn, rather brilliantly, starts his story and his rebooted DC movie universe in medias res. At the film's start, superhumans, or metahumans, to use DC's parlance, have been around for centuries, and Superman has been active as a superhero for 3 years. The movie begins in mid-battle, or at least during a lull, and it's a bold choice to introduce our new Superman while he's vulnerable. But everything Gunn introduces in this Superman movie and in this new DC universe is in medias res. The audience is too busy catching up to be involved in the story. With more discipline, this could have been a fantastic narrative choice. Hey, in 1977 Star Wars, I'll fucking die before I call it A New Hope, introduced a whole universe by beginning in medias res, amidst a space battle and a hostile boarding. But there was discipline to how Lucas began his universe in the middle. We were allowed to be in awe of Vader before he choked the starship captain. We were allowed to like the droids ducking blaster fire before they made it to the escape pod. We were allowed to like Leia before she stood up to scary Vader and claimed diplomatic immunity. Heck, even later in the movie we were eased into the in medias residential of the Galactic Senate being dissolved, when Tarkin and Vader waltzed in on the Imperial officers while they were having a meeting. Gunn, and I hate to use this turn of phrase, but I gotta jumps the gun on his introductions of story elements, and on his world and DC universe building. With no room to breathe, with no time made to be in awe of Vader, or to like the droids and Leia, this Superman has no room to develop a sense of scope. When your vision is this crowded, when it's this cluttered, there's no way to use any kind of vista. Superman has another problem, its main antagonist, Lex Luthor. We are living under the whims of real, insane, egomaniacal, profoundly insecure billionaire supervillains. 14 million people are likely to die because an incontinent, ketamine-addicted, apartheid Nepo baby mutant with a breeding kink pulled the plug on USAID. How can any comic book narrative compete with that kind of real-life villainy? With a few exceptions, there are analogs in the news for each and every shitty thing Luthor does in this movie, perpetuated by real tech brothers, oligarchs, and billionaires. Yeah, it might not be fair to blame Gunn for not having a crystal ball predicting all the nightmare shit that's happened since January while he was writing and filming this movie. And there are moments when the movie nails the psychoses of these guys beautifully, including, but not limited to, a jab at Peter Thiel's messianic/monarchic ambitions, as articulated by Gollum's less stable kid brother, Curtis Yarvin. But these don't feel like extrapolations, in the way that, say, classic Star Trek made extrapolations from, and metaphors of, the real issues of its day. In Superman, these feel like elements of skits, without the weight needed to call our modern oligarchs out for their insane neediness and cruelty. I don't want to give the impression that Gunn's Superman is devoid of enjoyability. I really meant it when I said that among the wreckage are absolute gems, pure and pristine moments of comic book delight. But I must point out that black hole singularities play a big part in Superman's plot. And this movie itself creates a narrative singularity, collapsing in on itself by trying to cram 60 years of comic book lore into 2 hours, while trying at the same time to create the kind of cinematic universe that took Marvel maybe 6 movies to lay down. As a devoted comic book geek, I know all of Clark Kent's co-workers from the Daily Planet. As a film critic and writer of fiction, I know there is no reason at all for Gunn to include all of Kent's co-workers in the climax of the movie. They're unneeded ballast, adding to the weight of Superman as it folds into its own mess. If you like comic books, and are patient enough to deal with the bad signal-to-noise ratio of this movie, check out Superman. Those gems among the rubble are really pretty. But they're too few and far between for me to say that Gunn has given us a great night at the movies, or what looks like a sturdy foundation for a new cinematic universe. Superman, arguably the world's most famous superhero, has been battling his greatest foe for many decades. No, I'm not talking about Lex Luthor, but rather these overblown movie productions that can't grasp what makes our beloved Kryptonian special. When seeing another reimagining, it's best to forget the one movie that got it right, Richard Donner's original 1978 classic, and accept that no Caped Crusader can have their story told with that much patience and sophistication anymore. That fact is especially apparent in the hands of the boyishly eccentric James Gunn, who attempts to bring a new flavor to revamp DC's universe with yet another reboot series. Geez, these studios have made more Superman clones than Luthor ever has. Gunn's approach is better than most failed attempts in the past, and at least tries to bring things back to basics. Gunn emphasized he wasn't interested in redoing the same tropes we've seen repeatedly, which becomes apparent at the beginning. Right away, Superman, David Corenswet, is back in his red underwear, no less, and gets bloodied and bruised by superpowered villains who mimic his every move. Then, here comes Krypto to the rescue. The excited dog jumps on his injured body, licks his face, and finally understands to pull his owner to safety. That right there lets us know that this movie is not taking things too seriously, unlike Zack Snyder's needlessly gritty versions, and we're back to at least having some good OL fun. The issue is that the context for why these villains are fighting on behalf of Lex Luthor, an electric Nicholas Hoult, is hard to grasp. Viewers are thrown into the calamity with no rhyme or reason, leading to soulless action scenes and a story that's put on the back burner until the movie catches up to it. Once things slow down, the talent of the cast is present as they bring their A game to lift this material. The moment that seals the deal, and arguably the movie's best scene, is when Lois Lane, Rachel Brosnahan, returns to her Metropolis apartment to find Clark Kent making her favorite breakfast for dinner, which she points out is his favorite. This back-and-forth banter has the elements of a witty sitcom that makes you laugh with Clark and Lois's combination of love and annoyance. Then, things take a frustrating turn, in a good way, where Lois interviews Superman with the hard questions he thinks he's prepared to answer, but isn't. It's a nice spin on the original's interview scene, but updates the dilemmas for the modern age. Sadly, not every modern update is a welcome one. If you've sat through any superhero movies over the last 20 years or so, you know how this goes. Superman crosses off every requirement on the Hollywood blockbuster checklist. 1. Puked up CGI action scenes with hardly any flesh or blood. Check. 2. Forced humor, such as Lex's, for lack of a better term, blonde, bimbo girlfriend Eve Teschmacher, Sarah Sampaio, taking selfies amidst the destruction. Check. 3. Forced commentary on modern politics that's necessary to talk about, but isn't conveyed with any elegance. Oh, you bet yeah. Superman's story is a classic immigrant experience that defines America, regardless of what any naysayers who want politics out of their movies claim against Gunn's recent comments. That said, Gunn's issue is providing little to no substance that makes the storyline stand on its own. Ironically, in attempting not to tell the same origin story we're already familiar with, Gunn's vision goes through the motions, leaving an empty feeling of more to be desired. What gives the movie its substance is the cast. Corenswet is respectable as Superman/Clark Kent. Though not at the level of Christopher Reeve, he certainly understands the heart of gold in the Man of Steel, blending a desire to do good with a confused conscience. Brosnahan is witty as Lois and manages to make the forced conflicts in her romance with Clark more tolerable. Elsewhere, franchise characters like Jimmy Olsen, Skyla Gisondo, and Perry White, Wendell Pierce, lend what they can, but more time with them would have been nice. Hoult, on the other hand, outperforms everyone. He has those cold blue eyes, perfect for the calculated evil genius with everything in his control. I don't doubt that comparisons to Elon Musk will be made, but imagine if Aaron Eckhart's fast-talking spokesman, Nick Naylor, in Thank You for Smoking, 2005, could enact geopolitical conflicts and open pocket dimensions. He even has an odd scheme of creating online harassment bots. This new Superman movie will likely appeal to younger viewers, unlike me. For mature viewers who have sat through one superhero movie after another for what feels like an eternity within 20+ years, Gunn's Superman isn't so strong. I got the chance to see Superman on the Monday after its release weekend. I had dropped my 2 daughters off at summer camp, keeping my activities for that day a secret all through the 30-minute or so drive. I then headed directly to my local theater and quietly took my seat, giving knowing nods to my fellow co-conspirator parents who were also working at 11 a.m. on a Monday. The lights finally went out after an exhaustive number of previews and Nicole Kidman telling me once again to go to the movies. Hey, Nicole, I'm already here. You got me. Do we really need an advertisement about going to the movies when we're already at the movies? Anyway, all of that was quickly forgotten as the magical first notes of John Williams' Superman theme began to echo in the theater. I'm sure I'm not the only fan whose heartstrings were pulled right back to childhood by those opening chords. As a kid, though, I was only old enough to see Superman 3 in theaters. I loved the Christopher Reeve movies. He was my Superman, and I still believe Superman 2 is one of the best superhero movies of all time. It's hard to beat Terrence Stamp's classic performance, may he rest in peace, as General Zod. Reeve had the innate ability to convey Superman's kindness and nobility. All one needs to understand of the perfection of Reeve's portrayal is to watch the closing moments of the first Superman film, as Reeves glances at the viewer with a warm smile and a wink. As a comics fan, I enjoyed both Superman Returns and Man of Steel, but I felt both missed the mark set by those earlier movies somehow. I liked Brandon Routh's performance, but I felt it a strange choice to have Superman just abandon the Earth and Lois Lane for 5 years. And Singer's script didn't have enough to differentiate it from what had come before. We still had a Lex Luthor plotting a real estate scheme much like in 1978's Superman. As soon as I saw Henry Cavill in HBO's The Tudors, I knew that this man was destined to play Superman. Like Christopher Reeve, Cavill gave us a Superman lifted from the comic page. I really wish we could have seen Cavill in a more hopeful Superman movie. There are brief glimpses in his appearances in the Snyderverse films that hint at the potential for an iconic portrayal that sadly never fully materialized. I did enjoy Man of Steel when it came out, despite its darker tone and somber ending. I think many of those fans critical of Superman's choice to kill General Zod seem to have forgotten that John Byrne, in his classic 1980s post-crisis revamp of the character, had Superman make the exact same choice. Also, though it wasn't explicit, Christopher Reeve's Superman throws Zod off a cliff in the Fortress of Solitude seemingly to his death. And Lursa is murdered by Lois for laughs. I agree that all of the destruction and loss of life, without Superman trying to save those civilians caught in the crossfire, felt wrong. I applauded the choice of killing Zod, as it was the bold choice to have Superman lose. And yes, make no mistake, Superman loses. A dramatic moment that Henry Cavill expresses beautifully, as you can see the despair and frustration etched into his face. And yet, I don't think Zack Snyder really sees it that way based on the ending of his cut of Justice League, in which Superman, along with the rest of the Justice League, murder a defeated foe, Steppenwolf, in cold blood. Wonder Woman even lops off his head with a sword. This seemed more in the spirit of Marvel's Punisher and definitely not in the spirit of these classic DC characters. As I sat in that dark theater, I was hopeful that James Gunn could bring back the light of the DC universe. In my opinion, his work on Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy movies was superb, giving the audience big laughs to go along with a lot of heart. Each Guardians movie was really about the beauty of found family when you remove all the science fiction trappings. I didn't go into Superman with complete confidence, though. I saw The Suicide Squad in theaters and felt Gunn had allowed the humor to get away from him to the point of outweighing the character drama and forgetting the heart. And though I enjoyed the movie, I felt Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 wasn't as funny as the previous installments. In many ways Guardians Volume 3 made the opposite choice of The Suicide Squad by forgetting to laugh. Luckily, right before teaming up with Peter Safran to run DC Studios, Gunn delivered the excellent Peacemaker TV series for HBO Max. In John Cena's Christopher Smith we had a lovable goofball struggling to overcome his tragic childhood with the help of his friends while also saving the world from evil butterflies. Loaded with sometimes crass humor? Yes. Some wonderful character moments that made you root for a psychopathic knucklehead and his friends. Yes. Yup, the perfect James Gunn project. Well, any fears I may have had over Superman dissipated as soon as Krypto the Superdog appeared. Krypto's appearance so early on felt like Gunn was saying to all of this, hey, don't worry. I get Superman. The dark edgy DCEU is over, just sit back and enjoy. The movie has been out for a while now and you can even buy it on streaming, but I'm going to try and avoid spoilers for those out there who haven't been able to see it yet. I'll just start by saying that David Corenswet will be this generation's Christopher Reeve. Never once was I able to catch Corenswet acting, all that I saw was Superman. I never expected that Gunn would be able to find an actor who could so completely capture Superman's Midwest charm like Reeve, but Corenswet nails every scene he's in. This is a Superman who never, even in his darkest moments, forgets to be kind. Gunn gives us a Superman with an unshakable resolve that the world is more good than bad, an optimism our world sorely needs right now. Superman is once again a beacon of hope. This carries into Corenswet's costume which, aside from the shape of the S, is remarkably comics accurate. I've always preferred the John Byrne shield of the 1980s and 1990s, and though I at first didn't care for Gunn's take, I have to say it ended up growing on me. And I'm glad Gunn kept the red trunks. It may seem an anachronistic holdover from the 1930s, but without that splash of red, Superman just doesn't look right. That was my primary critique of the Superman's New 52 look, it was just too blue. The rest of the main cast are equally great. Rachel Brosnahan, the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, is a great modern Lois Lane. Gone are the days, thankfully, of the damsel in distress. This Lois has agency. Brosnahan plays Lois as a strong reporter devoted to the truth who isn't afraid to engage in Superman's chaotic world side by side with the other heroes. And her chemistry with Corenswet feels truly genuine. There is an ending scene that just encapsulates why comic fans have been rooting for this couple for almost 100 years. Nicholas Hoult, no stranger to the superhero genre, plays Lex Luthor. Hoult's Luthor is menacing, Lex finally feels like a true threat for the first time on screen. Fittingly, Gunn has Luthor embody the villain of modern times, the callous, egotistical, billionaire industrialist. Hoult can effortlessly leap from charming salesman to cruel villain and back again, making his Luthor feel unpredictable and dangerous. You can see his hatred for Superman simmering in his eyes and his utter surprise and disdain for the people of Metropolis when he sees they love Superman more than him. Gunn smartly chooses to make our first live-action foray into the new DCU a contained story. This isn't Iron Man 2 where the story was tasked to introduce future plot threads and characters. This allows us time to really get to know this iteration of Superman and his supporting cast. That being said, part of the reason that this new DCU feels like a lived-in expansive world is the insertion of the Justice Gang. Nathan Fillion is the perfect Guy Gardner, a character I never ever expected to see on screen. But of course, I never expected the world to ever know the names Groot and Rocket Raccoon either. I can only hope we can get the recreation of Guy's famous showdown with Batman from Keith Giffen, J.M. DeMatteis, and Kevin Maguire's run on Justice League. I know I'm not the only fan hoping we get to see One Punch on the big screen. Gunn's knack for endearing audiences to fringe characters stretches to Isabella Merced's Hawkgirl and Edi Gathagee's Mr. Terrific. Merced embodies the strength and regality of the character. My only complaint, in fact my only issue with the entire movie, is the decision to make her screech whenever she is attacked. I found it distracting from the action and undermining the badass nature of Merced's performance. Gathagee proves that Mr. Terrific has been criminally underused in the comics and is a definite unexpected highlight of this film. I hope this character becomes a mainstay of this DCU. Gathagee gives the audience a brilliant and strong presence that movies need. And thank you, James Gunn, for keeping the Kents alive and present in Superman's life. A decision DC also made to the comics in the 1980s, the Kents keep Superman grounded to humanity and accentuate that the nobility of his character arose from his upbringing and not from being born on Krypton. Superman is the immigrant dream. Just as the Kents infused Superman with the best of our values, the immigrant Superman makes our world better in return. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were two Jewish immigrants who wanted desperately to make something of themselves in their new home. And they gave us a hero for the ages, infused with their values, that showed us the best of what we can become. Thankfully, as much as Gunn nails the ethos of Superman, the plot itself is fun and unafraid of its identity as a comic book movie, as it leans into the fantasy science fiction of the Silver Age Superman stories. I know most reading this have already seen the movie, but I won't spoil it for the minority who haven't yet made it to theaters. Gunn's movie explores what Superman means to the world. It's also the first Superman movie to really dig deep into the Luthor/Superman rivalry and the origins of Luthor's intense hatred for the Man of Steel. Why would this brilliant man spend so much of his time trying to destroy Superman? Gunn seems curious to explore Luthor's motivations and offers his answer in the film. Luthor's and Superman's worldviews collide in a way that teaches the audience more about both men. The action and special effects are amazing, and it was especially a treat to see a Green Lantern in action. A scene involving Mr. Terrific and his T-Spheres is a particularly highlight that only reiterates my previous point that this hero deserves more screen time in the DCU. Gunn and his team managed to make the entire picture feel like you are sitting inside a giant summer comic event, and I ate it up. Superman is a film that I will be watching again and again. I left the theater with a broad smile and a few happy tears at seeing my childhood hero brought to life on the big screen. I loved the reworked John Williams Superman theme by John Murphy and David Fleming. Somehow, it just wouldn't have felt like a true Superman without it, and I think they did the maestro proud. The perfect movie for our tumultuous times. Perhaps Superman is right, in our present times, being punk is being kind. This film, directed by James Gunn, written by James Gunn, based on characters from DC, produced by Peter Safran, starring David Corenswet, cinematography Henry Braham, edited by William Hoy, music by John Murphy, production companies DC Studios, distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures, release dates July 7, 2025. Running time 129 minutes. Country United States. Language English. Budget $225 million. Box office $618.7 million. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing movie stories. Thank you for watching.